Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of Hello Darling. This is our podcast in which I talk about Darling in the Franxx, which I have just seen for the first time today, and it blew me away and it gave me the idea to talk about this anime because I've kind of already wanted to discuss and talk anime, and this this has just given me total inspiration to go ahead and do this. So if you end up liking this, be sure to subscribe and like it and comment, do all that fun stuff. Let me know that you're out there, that you like it. So yeah, let's jump into it. I watched episodes 1 through 3, and in this series, I will be going through episodes. I'm not sure if I'll do them in bunches or if I'll start doing them one by one. But with Hello Darling, I will talk purely and entirely about Darling in the Franxx. So that could be by episode reviews, or that could be, by any other news that may show its way. So with that, let me just say that the animation is absolutely amazing. I love Studio Trigger work. I love everything that... I haven't seen everything that they've done, but everything that I have seen that they have done, I absolutely loved. It took me a while, I'll be honest. It took me a while at first to get used to their animation, but I love it. Now with this, I can tell it's definitely not as zany as like Gurren Lagann or Kill la Kill or anything like that. I know that they are also working with A1 Pictures, and if you're looking for me to be this wise guy that knows all the names of all the different people that work with different things, I don't know all the technicalities with this. I just went into this fairly blind and ended up loving what the result is. So I'm not sure how much Studio Trigger did and how much A1 Pictures did, but I'm a fan of both, and I am a fan of what they're doing. This anime is crazy. For those of you that kind of have no idea what this is about, it takes place in this on this world that I'm not sure if it's Earth. I don't think it's Earth, but maybe it is. Maybe Earth just got seriously messed up, but there's these weird beasts called, I think they're called Klaxosaurs, and they are these monsters that are really weird and alien looking, and they can only be destroyed if you rip into them and take out some sort of weird thing that's like their heart, and if you destroy it. And to destroy these monsters, you also have to fight it with a giant robot known as a Franxx, and it has to be It has to be piloted and operated by a male and female pilot, and they have to work together in unison, and you have to see how well they quote-unquote connect, and if they quote-unquote connect well enough, they are more powerful. So that's already strange as is, but one of the strange twists on this is one of the main characters has two horns. And she's very confident. She acts fairly different than everyone else. She acts kind of strange, and she starts earning this reputation. At the start of the anime, she already has this reputation that anyone that pilots with her will end up dying after 3 times. So I believe that they can go with her 3 times, but on that 3rd time they will die. And then through circumstances, she ends up sharing the space with the main character named Hiro, and he goes unconscious, but he doesn't seem, other than going unconscious, he doesn't seem that affected. You might think, well, if he goes unconscious, that sounds sounds like he was affected. But anyone else that pilots with her ends up bleeding and ends up being all cut and bruised and stuff. So that's pretty crazy. Wow, there's so much in the show, and I'm just now realizing, I'm like, how am I supposed to unfold this and talk about everything? Especially when I'm trying to smash up 3 episodes. Geez, okay. It seems like a lot of the kids are orphans. The main team is all orphans. I don't think they know who their parents are. I don't think they even care. I think they're kind of raised and bred in a certain way to be soldiers and not to care about that. And they have this this pope-like structure where there's these multiple priest-like figures, and then they have the main one who is known as Papa, and he seems to be the one that gives them orders and to be the one running things. They live in this weird city that's I believe like in a dome, and then outside of that it's kind of like a wasteland from what I can tell. Um, Seems like these kids have a pretty sheltered life. They're not able to go out on their own free will too much and do their own things. Speaking of which, Hero, his issue is that for some reason he hasn't been able to pilot or find that right partner to connect with. And one of his friends who he had connected with, things was not working. And she blamed herself, I believe, is how that went down. And then she went to go leave. And then I think that she got crushed, though I find it weird that it seems like they grew up together and these characters seem like they would be close to one another. And he seemed to care that she got crushed, or at least the dome got attacked, but it never got brought back up. I think that's, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of weird. I kind of wish that they kind of went more into that. Maybe they will in the future, or maybe they're just like, no, she was she was just the one in the group that no one really cared about. I don't know. I mean, obviously, if she was killed off like that, the writers didn't care too much for her. But I would have liked to seen the characters kind of discuss or talk about that a little bit. I wouldn't want it to drag the anime down too much, of course, but if that was what happened, I kind of, I don't know. I just kind of threw me off because there's so much stuff that I'm trying to catch because it's so crazy, all the stuff happening. Um, I mean, let's see. Okay. And also it's complicated because Hero um doesn't, like, he's not allowed to be with this girl with the horns that is this amazing pilot, even though they seem very compatible. And it has something to do that he's not like a high enough ranking or some dumb, some dumb government, BS stuff. But we all know where this is gonna go. They're obviously gonna be able to work together at some point. It might take a little while because they gotta throw in some drama and some things to go wrong. Some conflicts and such. Um, yeah, I mean, but I've been loving it. I could see this anime rubbing some people the wrong way because it is very sexualized. Whenever the people get into whenever people pilot the Franxx, the girl has to assume this position where she like bends over and then the guy is kind of behind her, and they steer and pilot things a certain way. It doesn't really show too much of like the controlling in the inside after the initial setup is done, at least not this far in the anime. Um, but yeah, that's really sexual. I actually had more of I actually don't have any problems with that personally. I feel like it's an interesting take, especially since the characters don't seem to know what kissing is. They don't really, it doesn't really seem like they're too aware of intimacy and stuff because they're bred to be soldiers. So I think it's an interesting dynamic to play into that personally. I do find it like I personally, I personally don't care about like the old man like slapping the woman on the butt or something because that's very just like uncalled for. Doesn't really. I mean, unless we're supposed to hate the guy or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's not really my type of humor. But as far as I hope you're not listening and being like, oh, great, this guy's watching the show and he hates. It's not that. Like I said, as far as like with the Franxx and everything else that's been in the show, completely okay with it. Love Kill la Kill, didn't have a problem with that. So totally cool with it. Yeah. So episode 3, I found it interesting. There's a guy with like the slick back hair, and I thought he was going to be a fairly nice guy, but kind of a boring character. But it turns out he had a little bit more depth than I expected. It turns out he wanted to kind of show Hero up, and he wanted to be like, "Hey, I'm the new hot shot. Let me pilot. Your girl." And who the girl with the horns? Her name is 02, and so due to circumstances, he ended up piloting her, and he thought he could handle it, and he couldn't. And I thought it was really funny, like seeing 02. Like I believe that she purposely pushed him past his limit because she wanted to prove that no one else is good enough for her except for Hero, because she developed this sort of crush on him, it seems. And I really like the dynamic and relation that they have with each other, and I'm really liking 02. I'm sure, I can tell that she's a fan favorite, and I can already see why. I'm sure this anime is going to throw a lot of twists and turns and surprises, and I honestly cannot wait. This show looks like a lot of fun, and it's just been a really good time. So go ahead and leave me your comments and your questions. Go ahead and let me know what you'd like to see me talk about more. As far as the future episodes go, I'm going to be a little bit more prepared and have a write up. Whenever I watch these episodes, I didn't know I'd be even doing this, so I'm kind of trying to remember a lot more than I feel like I would for our future episodes. So if you liked Hello Darling, I appreciate it. Thanks for giving it a listen. And yeah, let's talk some Darling in the Franxx, because this show is awesome. You guys take care and stay awesome. Bye. Holy mother of goodness, guys. Darling in the Franxx is awesome, and I'm sure if you're listening to this and you've already seen Darling in the Franxx, you're probably thinking to yourself, just wait until episode, blah blah blah, and waiting to hear what I have to say about that. But I'm utterly in love with the show. I don't mean to make this a podcast just about me in my infatuation with the show. I mean, I love the look, I love the mystery, I love the lore, and I love the way that they're building the characters, and of course, I love Zero Two. So I actually took some notes this time, so I'm more prepared. I'm super excited. For those of you that are new to this is Hello Darling, which is my anime-focused podcast focused entirely on Darling in the Franxx. Yes, that's right. This podcast, if you pay attention to it and listen to it, you can expect nothing but Darling in the Franxx. That's what we're going to talk about. And yeah, I'm super excited to talk about this. Starting right off with the opening, the theme song I believe is called Kiss of Death, and it is amazing. I'm totally going to have to put this on like a lot of my playlists, going to put this on my phone. I'm actually thinking that this song could rival Unravel from Tokyo Ghoul, which I think has an amazing opening. It's so hard to choose between the two. So if you have an opinion on one of those two songs, assuming that you do like both of them, I'd be interested to hear your opinion to see if you like Unravel or if you like Kiss of Death more. And if the song's not called Kiss of Death, I'm very sorry. You can put whatever the name of the song actually is. So one of the questions I was thinking of when I was watching the show is a lot of this has to do with, who you could partner with the best. And I was thinking, who do you think from the show that you'd be the best partner with? I mean, I do think Zero Two is probably like the fan favorite, and then probably Ichigo right behind her, because they get the most screen time and they seem to be the coolest. But I don't know. It's an interesting question to think about. Obviously, people are afraid of Zero Two. And this episode, which was episode 4, had a lot to deal with whether or not she is a monster, if people should consider her a monster, how human is she, and I believe I would have come to the same conclusion as Hero, which is something of the sort that she's still human. Even though she has something that makes her different, I don't think she's a monster as people would like to call her. I mean, I'm sure throughout the show there's still like 20 more episodes. I'm sure that by the end of, like, sometime throughout the show that I'm guessing that will kind of show maybe like a more monstrous side of her. Maybe there's like a hidden side of her, like an inner demon or something that I could see could shake the foundation of Hero's beliefs, and maybe he would even say, like, you are a monster, and then, kind of split them apart, especially since in this episode they had a very actually like hopeful and they just worked really well together, and I can't imagine this show is going to just continue going uphill without some sort of conflicts, without something that really takes things down a few pegs. I could definitely see that being one of the issues that comes to a head. But of course, I think that they would resolve that, and he would kind of learn from his mistakes, understand her a bit more, and I think by the end that it'll work out really well for one another. Speaking of which, it seems that he is still very compatible with her, and it still seems that he thinks that he will die the third time that he pilots with her. Obviously, I don't think that will be the case because we still got a lot more of a show to go, and I don't think we're going to lose our main character right off the bat like that. It is tough, though, for me to think of what they're going to do with that. Maybe they will have a serious injury, but maybe he'll survive, and so that they'll say, like, maybe they will. I don't know. It's okay. Maybe this is an episode 5 thing to go on. At this current moment, I don't know exactly what they'll do with that. Maybe he'll be injured and he'll say, "Oh, I can keep going," and then they're super concerned for him since he did survive the third time. They don't want him to push his luck. Maybe that's what it'll be. I don't know. You might know if you've already watched the series. Let's see. Okay, so one thing I've noticed, and I thought about in this episode, is that her name is 02, which obviously we all knew that right out the gate when we met her. However, why isn't she 01? I personally think that there's a 01 that may have been like a failed experimentation and is a more powerful version than her, but is probably more unhinged. And I think that version will come into play at some point in the series, and I could see that being a massive like boss battle, maybe even the final enemy by the time things are all said and done. I know with Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill, they had a huge turning point in the show, and I could definitely see that being one of the huge turning points. So, we'll see where that goes. Next up, I have Still Yourself, which she's not talking about being a thief and taking herself, but Ichigo mentions that she needs to like still herself so that she becomes a better leader, and she makes herself stealed away from emotions. And I find that interesting because I manage a team here at Vindicated Entertainment, and I also manage a team at a retail store. I'm the store manager there. I'm the only one, and I'm in charge of all the responsibilities. And so I look into leadership a whole lot, and I think a lot of times anime in particular covers this idea, whenever they cover leadership, about stealing off your emotions, not showing them. And it's something I'm at conflict a lot. It's something that I understand on one hand, but on the other hand, I don't entirely agree with. You can't be too emotional, when you're the leader. You do bear responsibilities. There's times that you might be afraid. There's times that you might be worried, or anything like that. But you have to show your team, your team's going to look towards you, and they're going to feed a lot off of you. So I do think it's important in that regard. But I also think it's important to be able to have compassion, to lead with love. That's a phrase I've been using for myself personally. Just to lead with love, and then everything else, will kind of fall into place from there. But we'll see how Ichigo's leadership goes throughout the series. I'm very interested in seeing that. I'm a little afraid for her. I think she'll survive for a very long time, but we'll see. Speaking of which, I do kind of feel like this team might be Levi's Squad 2.0 question mark. I feel like a lot of them are going to die in a single episode. I don't think that they will all die in the same episode. I even could see that they all die by the end of the series, though, which I'm a little worried about, but honestly, I'm going to probably be okay with, because I don't really care. I mean, like, I think it helps if it helps the story, if the story, as long as they're just not killing characters off to just kill them off, like, as long as it feels like it makes the story like better, and that those characters kind of had their run, then I'm perfectly fine with it. And I'm emotionally prepared for that, I think. I do really like Ichigo, and I really like her partner. The other ones, not so much at the moment. Of course, I'd be very upset if 02 died. I think that would be a huge mistake, because she is definitely a driving force in the show for me. I don't think she'll die at all, though. Like, my position on how likely she would be to die, I would say, is like a 0%. I guess I'd give it like a 1%, because there's always a chance. But I'm going to give it a 1%, except for the very end of the show, episode 24. I'm not sure if that's meant to be the end of the whole series or just the end of the season. If it's the end of the series, I could move that maybe at this point to like a 50%. But I think overall that she's not going to die. She might die and then come back or something, whatever. But I just mean permanently dead. Speaking of which, that'd be interesting if they started turning that into something like where people die and then they get mutated and then turn into Klaxosaurs. They're wondering where they're all coming from, and as humanity's shrinking, these Klaxosaur beasts are popping up everywhere. That'd be an interesting concept. I'm not entirely sure. Like maybe their hearts are kind of made of people in some way. I don't know. That's a very weird thing. But I know that anime can get weird. I feel like Darling in the Franxx is already weird, and it's going to only get weirder. So I'm just spitballing ideas here. Let's see. So Mitsuru, I think that's the guy's name with the slick back hair that piloted Zero Two this last episode. He's obviously very afraid of Zero Two. So that leaves me with a question. Would you be afraid to partner with Zero Two? In my own personal opinion, I would be afraid if I was in his position and she did not want me to be her partner. Because I don't want to mess with her because she obviously kicks a lot of butt. And she's very mysterious and all that stuff. But if she like wanted me to be her partner and things seemed to work out and everything with her, then I would actually be. I feel like I'd actually be okay with it, especially given this world where they don't have a lot of hope anyways, and it's not like they play a bunch of video games in their free time and just have a good time. I mean, they're bred for battle. They're made to be soldiers. I don't actually think I'd have a problem with it. I think I'd be very much like Hero in this circumstance. But that's just me. How do you feel about that? Would you be afraid of her? Let me know in those comments. Also, I forgot to mention this in the earlier episodes, but I really like that the aspect ratio changes. I have not seen that, I don't think, anywhere else, except for maybe that Nathan Fillion Uncharted film that came out, which if you haven't seen that on YouTube, I haven't even played like a lot of Uncharted, but I personally thought that video was pretty cool. But anyways, we're not talking about that. The aspect ratio changing, just super cool, super dynamic. It really makes it feel very cinematic. It was super cool. And then the last thing that I took a note on was space ? The main character mentions something about going, like that he's always had a dream of going to space or like flying up to space or something like that. And that really caught my attention because I feel like he wouldn't mention going to space unless they're going to go to space in the show. So maybe the Klaxosaurs come from space. Maybe it's sort of like the Venom parasite thing from Marvel where like there's a meteorite, it crashed, and it spread this alien all over their world. It could be something like that, but I do think that maybe by the end of this we'll start seeing them piloting maybe larger Franxx, and then it'd be in space. But at that point, I'm not sure if it's too much like Gurren Lagann. We'll have to wait and see on that. But anyways, those are my thoughts for episode 4 of Darling in the Franxx. Thank you so much for listening. I would be very interested to hear what you have to say. Please do not spoil the show, especially if you love the show and you want someone else to love it as much as you. I really would like to experience it the same way that you did, in which case it was hopefully spoiler-free. But yeah, let me know. How do you feel about 02? What do you think about my predictions? Obviously, don't tell me if they're correct or incorrect if you know the answer to it. But, tell me if you think that if you're having fun, with my predictions, or if I'm just so off the wall with them that it sounds stupid that I'm even saying these things. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to Hello Darling, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Stay awesome. Hello and welcome to Hello Darling episode 3. I am so happy to be talking with you today. This is Vincent Baker, and in case you did not know, this is the anime podcast specifically dedicated for none other than Darling in the Franxx, in which I am watching for the first time. And let me tell you, I am enjoying it. It has been a great ride so far, and I'm excited for all the twists and turns, and I hope I enjoy them. So let's see. So they mentioned something about magma and how they're drumming up the magma or something. I didn't quite catch exactly what they were saying about magma, but it makes the what are they called? The Klaxosaurs. It makes the Klaxosaurs come up. And I think that that's pretty interesting. I mean, obviously the Klaxosaurs live underground, and maybe they've always been underground, and maybe people started getting energy from magma in some way that was more resourceful or something, and when they started doing that, they were like, yay, this is great. And then all of a sudden these beasts started attacking and destroying everything. That would remind me of a bit of Gears of War. I'm not sure if you've played Gears of War, but in those games, they enter a time of peace because they find this new awesome energy source called emulsion, and as they start getting this emulsion, it starts pissing off the people underground, which are known as locusts, which are like these monster dudes, and then they come up and they're like, hey, that's not cool, and they start killing people. That's basically what happens there, but I'm not sure if that's the case here. I also noticed that they pray to Papa, which is interesting, because in this case, they see Papa. They know Papa is like a being that they see with their own eyes. It's not the same as having faith. So it seems to be like an allegory to religion and to the concept of God, but not quite the same, since they visibly see Papa, they speak to Papa, and they have direct orders from Papa. Like, they can just call him on their phone. Well, maybe not the numbers in the main team, but you get what I'm saying. And they also mentioned something about Papa can have it rain, and like he decides when it rains. I wonder if that is because they see Papa as a god, that he can perform miracles and perform, supernatural acts, or is their rain done in some sort of artificial way? I wasn't quite sure what they meant by that. I would guess that they do see him as a god of sorts, but I don't think that they believe that he can do these like crazy miracles like that. I think that it just happened to rain. But maybe I'll find out, or maybe I'm just being really dense. I also noticed that they had scheduled times for everything. Hero mentions that they have everything scheduled throughout their day, which makes a lot of sense in terms of being productive and making sure that you make the most of, your schedule. But of course, this isn't scheduled to their liking, it's scheduled and chosen for them. They're very much soldiers, and they get the VIP treatment when they're walking by, and they're cheering, and they're like, yay, everyone loves us. And, that to me had a eerie undertone. I'm not sure if it was meant to, but it's very much to me like, yeah, they're just cheering for you because, like, they're putting you out in these horrible situations and circumstances. And so they're just trying to like be as nice as possible about it and try to treat you as well as they can, because you're going to have a horrible time and your future is not looking so well. So they're just trying to make it a little bit better. I don't think it's almost like making like a cow or pig happy before they get slaughtered. That's the way it came across to me, but we'll see. We also were introduced to another team who I don't know if they said their names, or if they did, I don't remember them, but they were a little bit older, a little bit more experienced. They definitely did not seem to like 02. And I predict, last time I predicted that maybe our main squad's kind of the Levi squad, and they're all going to go out, just in a blaze, like they're just all going to die. Now that we're introduced to this other squad, though, I think that might be them. I think that maybe this new squad will all die, and then it will sort of harden and shock our main characters, and then our main characters will kind of systematically die throughout the show. That's my new theory, but we'll see. I also have a bullet point, and I put feeling alive, but I don't remember what that's about. I guess maybe these people strive to feel alive. It does seem like... Oh, I remember now. Hero mentions that when he's with 02 and he's piloting, that's the only time that he feels alive. And I can understand that. Being a creative, there's sometimes, especially before I started doing all the work I'm currently doing, there's a lot of times where, I didn't feel like myself. I felt hollow, and I didn't feel the joy that I wanted to feel. I saw joy around me, but I just wasn't feeling that. And so I kind of understand, he's put in a way different situation than I've ever been in, of course. Thankfully, I have not been in that position, but I kind of understand what he's saying, and so I really like that they touched on that. Meanwhile, his friend his friend Goro, I just now paid a lot of attention to his name and was thinking, Goro, because to me Goro sounds like a big beefy guy. That's just what I think about. But Goro actually has some meaning behind it. I don't know the exact meaning, but I do know that the samurai who popularized the Masamune katana, his name was Goro Masamune. So I'm not sure if this Goro has any relation to him, but I know that within Goro Masamune's lore, he was known for being very divine. He was known for, building this perfect sword, and he could it would never harm anything innocent. So maybe that's just trying to tell us that Goro is going to be an all around really good character. He's going to be really good. Maybe he'll die sacrificing himself for a noble cause, that kind of thing. We'll have to wait and see. I think Ichigo means strawberry, which I don't really know how that could relate. I mean, strawberries are sweet, and Ichigo seems fairly sweet, so maybe that's a thing. I at least think strawberry is Japanese for Ichigo or whatever. I think so. I didn't want to look up these names because I want to type in their names and type in Darling in the Franxx, and then it'll spoil me on who dies or something. So I definitely didn't want to double check myself in this case. So yeah, that's just where I'm at with that. I also noticed that Mitsuru, I think is his name, the guy with the slick back hair, he's taking some pills. I don't think these are pills just to get better. I mean, I was thinking, maybe since he was in the hospital, maybe he's still needing to recover, but since he was trying to keep this hidden from one of his friends and be very secretive about it, I don't know exactly what he's trying to do with those. I'm not sure if it's some sort of steroids or something. That'd be crazy. It's supposed to make him better. He seems to have an ego that was shattered, and he really hates that Hiro is better than him in some way. So he's trying to get better. So either he's slowly killing himself, or he's slowly trying to make himself better. I'm gonna go with the latter on that. But I think ultimately, even though he's kind of been a jerk, I think he might get a slight redemption arc. He may die in the midst of that, but we'll see. And 02 mentioned something about having feelings, and I haven't thought about it until just now, but does 02 have feelings? I think she does. She smiled when Hiro was talking about how great she was and all that stuff. But I don't know, she seemed to... I think Ichigo questioned if she had feelings, and then she doesn't seem to mind carrying Hiro with her, even though he could die. It almost seems like she's just using him, which I'm not entirely sure. I'd like to think that's not the case. I really want to like 02 a ton, so I want to think that she actually, has feelings for Hiro, but we'll see. I also wrote, I think the last note I have is he can't make it, Hiro can't make it rain because he isn't Spartacus, who is the bringer of rain. So if you watch Spartacus, you'll get that dumb joke. But I think that's all for me. Overall, the episode was amazing. I've loved every episode so far. I am hooked on this show. I wish I could watch it over and over and binge watch it and all that good stuff. But alas, I have obligations to fulfill. This has been just so great, and I've been getting a lot more feedback than I expected, because I didn't necessarily expect it to get any feedback, because I haven't heard a lot about this show, and I haven't heard any of my friends talking about it, and I don't believe any of my close friends have seen it. So to be getting, to have you listen to this and getting your feedback has been amazing, and I really appreciate that, and I ask that you keep commenting, you keep giving me feedback. I've been very careful to try to make sure that I see nothing that spoils me. Some of you message me long paragraphs, and I'll get back to you, I promise. But I'm waiting until I watch more of the show, because I really, really don't want to get spoiled. And I know that you enjoy the show if you're listening to this, and that you would want me to experience it the same way that you did and be just as amazed as you are. So thank you for caring about that, and thank you for listening so much. It's been a great talking to you. And I'll catch you next time on Hello Darling. Take care. Stay awesome. Welcome to episode 4 of Hello Darling, the podcast specifically talking to you about the awesome anime Darling in the Franxx. This episode, I am going to discuss episode 6, which is known as Darling in the Franxx. So it's named after the show itself, which is pretty interesting to me. I assume that this is supposed to be sort of this is the big moment that you realize that Hiro did not die from piloting with Zero Two for the third time. So it's interesting. I did not at all believe that he would die from that because he's the main character and he has something special going on with him. So they never fooled me into believing that he was going to die, though I don't think most people would think that, but I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments below if you thought that he was going to die the third time he piloted with with Zero Two. I don't think that's the case, but if that was genuinely you, I would be very interested to hear your side of that. So I believe that this episode was probably named Darling in the Franxx just because it shows the overall. It kind of got past all the introductory stuff, I feel like, at this point, and it kind of shows the main, I don't know, like one of the higher points in the show, which is pretty interesting. It almost seems, at this point we're a quarter the way through with the show, and I think at a quarter it's kind of like it's almost showing as if it's halfway point, which I think I mentioned this in some of the other episodes I've done. Studio Trigger is known for changing things up halfway through, so this is like the halfway of the halfway. If they change things at episode 12, like I suspect they will. So we'll see where that goes from there. I'm pretty interested about that. So also, I noticed that there are for the people to depend so much on these kids and their Franxx is crazy to me that they have so few, because they would do so much better if they had a lot more. Now, I do suspect that there is a reason for this. I don't think that it's just happenstance. Like, obviously, if they had more of these pilots and they could defend against more of these Klaxosaurs, they'd be doing a lot better, and they wouldn't be kind of struggling on the brink of, survival or whatever. So I imagine we haven't really seen a lot of the adults, but I guess there is a lot of adults, and there's just so few kids. Maybe there was some sort of like alien being that like somehow turned a lot of the kids into Klaxosaurs, and somehow they have these kids. Maybe these kids are artificially made after. Oh, okay, theory idea. So crazy alien, either from outer space or underground, somehow warped all the kids, or like there's some sort of disease and it only affected kids for some reason, and all the kids turned to Klaxosaurs, and the adults were like, oh crap, we're going to die unless we take some of the DNA or something that we had from kids and they made their own genetically altered like android artificial kids, and then for some reason I don't know where they would come up with the Franxx technology. Maybe some aliens are playing some sick game with them, so they drop them off these mechs, but they're like, "Hi, it can only be piloted by kids. You guys don't have any." Or maybe there's like good aliens, but I don't even know why I'm going to aliens. I guess just because I imagine this show's going to go crazy, and so I'm trying to go crazy with it. So I mean, I know that they haven't really shown aliens aside from Klaxosaurs, if you count those as aliens. But that's just where my mind's going. I mean, I feel like that's very crazy, but I feel like this show has, I mean, we're only 6 episodes in, and this show has been crazy since episode 1, and I feel like there's just so much to see, and that's one reason why I love this show so much, and I'm sure if you're listening, that's the reason why you love the show too, is just because it makes you wonder, it makes you think, and as you learn this stuff, I'm sure you become like thrilled and enthralled by the whole experience and just seeing everything happen. So I'm super excited about it. Let's see. So I also noticed that the Klaxosaur attack in waves, which, I mean, I don't study like animals, but I feel like if there's like if there's like a pack of dogs or wolves or whatever, and they're going to attack someone, they're not going to like have some of them stand back and wait until the first wave is done. I felt like that was interesting that they attack in waves. And also, since they're robotic, I'm thinking, what if these Klaxosaurs are intelligent? Maybe if they were kids prior, maybe they have their intelligence of being a kid. Maybe it's sort of like something I've seen in another anime that I won't spoil, in case you haven't seen that anime and you didn't want spoiled. But in another anime, there's like monsters, and if they have the people inside, and if they kill someone, it helps them change back or whatever. So maybe this has something to do with that. Maybe the kids are operating on this I'm not sure, huh? The kids have their brains, and if they manage to kill the Franxx that maybe have a core in them, I mean, we haven't seen any type of core in them. Maybe the Franxx or maybe they're powered by Klaxosaur cores that are very hard to get, because to kill a beast you have to destroy the core, so it's very hard to get the core. So therefore they have very few cores, meaning they have very few Franxx. Maybe that's something. I'm spitballing ideas here, guys. Also, I found it weird that the first team that was there, who I can't remember their name at all. I remember Squad 13 because that's awesome, but can't remember the other squad. They ran out of fuel pretty quickly, which I guess was because of their weapons that they were using, where they were, sticking them with the chain rod things and then spinning around and zapping them and stuff. I guess maybe that burns a lot of fuel, but I found it was interesting that it seemed like they were like very unprepared. Like their fuel was very low, and they should have had a lot more fuel to take on what they were trying to take on. I feel like that was just kind of messed up. I'm like, really? Like they didn't prepare you guys better? I understand that they're trying to survive, and they probably have like low remaining supplies and stuff like that. But I'm just like, man, like if you're counting your entire city on this, you better give them everything you can. I don't know. What do you think about that? Also, I was thinking a lot of this show has been about defense and defending, the different areas that they live in, and that would make for a pretty awesome tower defense game, I think. I mean, I haven't played a ton of tower defense games in a while, but I think that Darling in the Franxx would make an awesome one. And I was wondering, I put down a note. Where are the Klaxosaurs coming from? This kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Do they come from being kids? Do they come from space? Do they come from underground? I feel like there has to be a twist. I feel like they're not just going to say. I don't think that this question is going to be left unanswered, and I hope it's not. I feel like that would be terrible. Well, maybe not terrible, but I feel like that would be just. I feel like it would make the whole story better if they explain where they come from. And of course, I'm giving them time. I'm not saying that they have to tell me now. I'm just saying by the end of the series, I feel like we definitely should know, or we definitely need to know where these Klaxosaurs came from. And I definitely am expecting some sort of major twist. I'm also very curious how right or wrong I I am about a lot of my predictions, because I'm throwing a lot at the wall. But from what I've heard from you is that you guys have told me that you like a lot of my predictions, and I'm picking up on a lot of things that some of you guys have missed whenever you're this early on in the show. So that makes me very happy, and I really appreciate hearing that feedback. Please give me more feedback, because I like knowing that the show's being listened to and it's being heard. Let's see. So the last thing that I wanted to point out in this episode is Goro called out at Hero and Zero Two and asking if they're okay. Now, I brought that up because I felt like it was interesting that he mentioned Zero Two. I feel like in a lot of other anime, they kind of write certain characters to just care about certain other characters, and whenever they give them dialogue, they don't really mention like anyone that's not like that main character. So obviously we've seen that Goro has cared about Hero, but we haven't really seen him care about Zero Two, and there's a lot of reasons why his team shouldn't really care about her, or at least in the sense that they just don't like her. And I just personally found it interesting. Like, he's such a nice guy that he of course cares about Hero, and that's like his primary concern when everything's going down. But he mentions, Zero Two as well, and it's just like, I feel like this guy just really cares, which is awesome. I mean, it kind of makes me a little worried about his character surviving the next, 18 or whatever episodes. But he's a really cool guy, and I really like his character. I feel like a lot of people could watch this show and just love Zero Two, and that's fine. And maybe Ichigo too. But I feel like Goro is like kind of like the underrated character. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm imagining this. Maybe a lot of people love Goro, but I just think he's really cool. And maybe I'm kind of biased because he has the same voice actor as Shu in the dub for Guilty Crown, and I'm watching this dub, by the way. I mean, of course, it doesn't matter which way you watch it. Hopefully, you don't mind which way I watch it. It's been very enjoyable, if you can't tell, for me. So as long as I'm enjoying it, I think that's what's important. Anyway, anyways. That's the end of episode 4 of Hello Darling. Of course, I always want to hear feedback from you. Please let me know that my message is being heard loud and clear, so that way I can keep doing more of these. And, it's always fun. It encourages other people to share their comments and stuff when you share your comments. Because a lot of the comments I have been getting have been through personal messages and email and things like that. But I'm not getting a ton of comments on the actual SoundCloud or any place that's being shared. Which it's fine. First and foremost, I just care that you're listening, and that means a lot to me. But just throwing that out there to you. So my question with you for this episode, let's see, what should my question be? It's kind of tough because chances are you've already seen the anime. So let me ask you this: do you think that Darling in the Franxx would make a good tower defense game, or do you think it would be better to be maybe like a third-person action adventure? Or, how would you like to play it? Do you think it'd be more fun as an indie kind of game or like a AAA budget game? Do you think it should be like multiplayer centric, like online multiplayer? Do you think it would be better to be more of a single player story driven experience? Would you want it to recapture the story of the anime if they did it, or would you want them to try to expand or do some sort of side story? That's what I want to hear from you for this one. And as always, thank you so much for listening. You are amazing, and be sure, as always, to stay awesome. See ya. Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Hello Darling. It is a pleasure to have you here. This is the anime podcast dedicated specifically to Darling in the Franxx. So let's jump right into it. Let's see. The first point I'd like to make about this episode is it was a lot of fun and it was amazing. And in case you didn't know, this was for episode 7, Shooting Star Moratorium, I believe is how you pronounce that word. I actually don't know what that word means. Maybe I should have looked that up before recording this, but we'll go with it. I believe maybe it just means like there's a lot of them, like maybe a collection of them. I'm not sure. But it was a very fun episode, and I really enjoyed this episode. It was a nice break from the rest of everything else going on. However, it does have me a little concerned and a little worried because I feel like with the tone of the show, it will get pretty bad from here, but I don't know. Maybe we'll see. We'll see about that. We had Dr. Franxx. I think his name's Dr. Franxx. Dr. Franxx told or warned. I should say warned. He warned Hiro to not let 02 consume his emotions, and that's interesting to me. Is she actually a monster? Is that why? Is that what the issue is, or is he talking more about, if you fall in love, then maybe there's some sort of issue? That would be very interesting because for one reason or another, this society has hidden the concept of like love and raising children and all that stuff. There has to be something more to that. I'm not exactly sure what that something more is. Maybe they can't pilot the Franxx if they're in love, which I would find a little weird because we've already seen before that if they seem to like work together and have better chemistry, then the Franxx seem to operate better. So I'm not sure how I would be able to distinguish that between being in love with one another. Maybe if they're in love, it becomes a whole lot more powerful. That would be something. But why wouldn't they want them to do that? Maybe they want the kids to barely be able to survive and kind of be on the ropes of the Klaxosaurs. Maybe this kind of perpetual war is benefiting them in some way. I'm not entirely sure, but if that's the case, then I wonder if those two adults, whose names I cannot remember, but there's like the guy with like the closely shaven head, and then there's the woman, and they go around and like kind of give out the orders and stuff. I wonder, or not necessarily give out the orders, but they sort of follow orders from higher up the chain. I wonder if they're in on it. I could see like maybe that they're not in on it. They just follow the orders and stuff, and so maybe we might even get where they turn against the higher ups and they try to help out the kids. I could see that happening. Also, I think this episode, if nothing else, confirmed. I mean, it didn't say, but I do think this episode pretty much confirms that this takes place on Earth. The cities, the cars, the vehicles, everything looks very Earth-like. I do believe that they are on Earth. I don't think that's a far stretch. And something I alluded to in my last episode is I loved how Goro mentions, he talks not only he not only cares about Hero, but he also cares about Zero too. And I thought it was awesome that the show wrote that for that character. And likewise, in this episode, we have Mitsuru who saves Kokoro. I believe that's their names. But the guy on the team who seems to not, he seems to be kind of like a jerk, sorta. But when the bookcase is going to go fall on her, he pulled her back, which I think is really cool because I think most writers, I feel like, would kind of be like, oh well, here's this guy who's her partner. Let's just have this guy save her or whatever. But I think the show went out of its way. Well, I won't say out of its way, but it made sure to make a point like, hey, there's multiple facets to these kids' personalities, and I love that. I absolutely love that it was Mitsuru who did that. So that was cool. Now she picked up a book that was called Your First Childbirth, which I don't think was by any accident. I think everything in this show is put in the show for a very specific reason, which is one thing that I love about the show. It's a very good telling of really amazing writing. The book, The First Childbirth, that's interesting. I mean, I wonder if she's going to read up on that and get educated on that and say, hey, squad mates, like, this is some weird things that they used to do back in Civilization. And I don't think it would just stop there. I think that whole plot would go further. I think that we would start seeing, I don't know. I know that there's so much to this show. It's very hard to break down, but I appreciate you guys letting me try to break this down for you, even though you more than likely already know the answers to all these questions. I'm just like, they're just bouncing around in my mind, though. Now, one thing I was thinking, though, about Dr. Franxx is that I believe they said that he was the one that sent the kids to the beach, and he was very, like, unorthodox, and that was a very weird thing to do. I wonder if he actually intended for the kids to step outside of the beach and find that lost civilization, to even find that book even, to be able to find these different signs and details. If that's the case, then that means that Dr. Franxx may actually be on their side, and that Papa and all of his people are really evil, which I think is almost a definite. I think that we might start seeing this become, I definitely think this show is going to evolve past just having Papa and the kids versus the Klaxosaurs. I definitely think there's going to be a lot more internal struggles and conflicts and enemies. So I wonder where Dr. Franxx will fall on that. I'm thinking he may fall on the kid's side, but we'll see. If he's, going back to what I said earlier, if he's telling them not to, Hero not to let 02 consume his emotions, and there's some problem that he's aware of with, like, falling in love, if that's the route that they take, then maybe he's not on the good side. But I think maybe his hand was forced to create these Franxx. He also, I actually just had this idea pop up. He has, like, robotic parts. Maybe he tried to rebel against Papa and them, and then they, like, halfway destroyed him, and then they're like, you have to do what we say, or we're going to do X, Y, and Z, or something. So, I could see that. If I had to take a guess, I'm going to say he's a good guy, but, maybe he's not. I am very curious, though, about, if he meant for them to discover that city with their own eyes. But we'll see. Let's see. And then I wrote down that Hero... Okay, so this is awesome. So Hero mentions, he's like, I wonder if the extracting of magma is what caused the Klaxosaurs to attack. Is it our fault? Like, did we cause this? And then the other kid, whose name I cannot remember, he starts fanatically yelling about how amazing Papa is and all this stuff, basically showing that a lot of these kids are indoctrinated, and if you are to question the authority, it's very out of place, and it's not going to be, it's going to fall like on deaf ears. So, but what's cool about Hero bringing up the extracting magma theory is that was my theory I gave, I believe, last episode. I definitely gave it in one of these episodes. So that's pretty cool. I think it all but confirms my theory. So I do think that the magma has a lot to play into this. And I don't know, maybe with Papa and all of them, they have there. I feel like there has to be some sort of major benefit to the magma. Like maybe it gives them immortality. Like maybe I know that with the Battleborn video game, I thought it was really cool that they basically had this civilization that would drain the like suns from different solar systems and use that energy to create immortality. So I could see the magma and like the sun. I mean, I'm not sure like the heat differences of these kind of things. Of course, it's all sci-fi anyway, so that doesn't even really matter. But that could be interesting because immortality is a thing that a lot of older people would probably want. Especially when they're high up in power and they can try to bend the laws to their whim and get whatever they desire. I think them going for immortality would make sense. I mean, it's very shady, but I can see it making sense. Also, I found whenever they were on the beach and then Hiro and Ichigo were walking, and Ichigo was like walking in his footsteps, I thought that was one of the most adorable things I had seen in any anime. It's just like so subtle, and I could see most people like watching that and not even thinking about it, but just seeing the backdrop of the stars and then like the shooting stars and the beach and the night sky and stuff, it's amazing. And I hate that the show is forcing me to choose between Hiro and Ichigo or Hiro and Zero Two. I kind of just wish that Ichigo just loved Goro because I think he's an awesome, nice, super cool man, and I wish that she had feelings for him, but we'll see where the story goes with that. Hopefully he doesn't die, and then she's like, oh, wait, I did have feelings for that guy. I don't think that will happen, by the way, but I'm just saying that would be unfortunate. And also watching this show and just seeing how crazy everything is, it makes me think, like, man, we never get anything this... I mean, not even, like, a quarter of this crazy and, like, from, like, Hollywood-produced movies. And it's such a shame because that's, like... I mean, it also makes me realize, like, how much I love anime. Because it's just crazy to me to think that they were able to just fund this entire anime. It had to cost tons of money, and they had this crazy idea. And it's almost like with anime, the crazier the idea and the more like hard creative work you're willing to put into the idea. In Japan, they're like, yes, this is amazing. Let's fund this. And the more like generic it is, it like falls by the wayside. And with Hollywood, it's like the opposite. It's like, oh, we need the same thing over and over and over again. Let's fund that money. And someone comes up with the original idea, and it's like, we're not sure about that. So this anime is just kind of giving me more confirmation of why I love anime so much. And I would be shocked if this anime did not fall in my top 10 list, or maybe even my top 5 list. I'm absolutely loving it. Thank you so much for listening to me on this journey, and thank you for not spoiling me. I've had a few people maybe come close. I've tried to like dodge some comments, and if you've been commenting and you actually wanted to hear back from me, I'm sorry. I'm just really trying to jump through all these at the moment, but my plan is to finish, since I'm releasing this weekly, I'm actually going to be way ahead of schedule. So basically, I'll have it at a point where I finish the show, and then I'll still be releasing the episodes, and then I will let you guys know when that happens. That way you can discuss some more of the spoilers with me, and maybe we can even do a live stream and talk about it live at some point. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But anyways, I'm super excited. This has been so cool, and this is the perfect show for me to do this podcast on because there's so much for me to analyze and digest and talk about. It's been amazing. It's been an amazing ride, and we still got a ton more episodes left in this. So you guys hold in tight, and let's do this. As always, stay awesome. Bye. Welcome to episode 6 of Hello Darling, where we are an anime podcast exclusively talking about none other than the anime Darling in the Franxx. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for listening this far. And yeah, I am loving Darling in the Franxx. Now, as I've been posting the episodes for this podcast, I have been getting most of the feedback I've been getting is that the show turns weird after like episode 6 or so. Well, I'm currently on episode 8, and I haven't noticed that weird twist, so to speak. I'm assuming that maybe the people, maybe it's not specifically episode 6, but maybe around 6, like maybe it's just sort of like a guesstimate, or maybe that's just when, they start noticing the changes, because I did pick up on the fact that there are, things dealing with like babies and the kids and this weird mysterious things going on and all that stuff. But, we'll have to see. This episode started off with an awesome fight. It kind of started off out of nowhere. I somewhat questioned if I started the wrong episode, but I understand why it did this. It was a cool opening fight. Had some different kind of music that I actually liked for the show. It gave some more diversity, so it was pretty cool. This beast was very interesting, and it had this weird melting suit spray stuff that sprayed into the Franxx, and I don't necessarily like need that in my anime, but I'm okay with it. It kind of led to the events that happened throughout the entire rest of the show, or for this episode, I should say. So, which is basically the fact that the girls and the boys split their sides of the dorm or wherever they're staying at, and they were concerned with the guys being too pervy, which, I was actually surprised that we got another more lighthearted episode overall, because I thought after the last episode, which was very, very lighthearted overall, very, more based on the jokes and the comedy and stuff like that, I was like, oh man, this next episode is going to be rough. But yeah, this one was still pretty lighthearted, and it also started off at the beginning with the Dr. Franxx guy, kind of confirming my theory of the last episode, where I was saying that, I think he's experimenting with these kids, he's doing some things that are off the beaten path, he wants them to engage and be more like romantic with one another, and he... Sorry, I was trying to open the door and I realized that it's like it won't open, so I feel like I'm locked in here, so that distracted me. Anyways, he's like, hey, don't tell the older folks, which I assume is Papa and the rest of the people. So, I do think he's up to something. I do think that he's probably against them because they are evil, and he is trying to have this Squad 13 be the heroes of the story, try to fix, maybe right some wrongs, fix things, that kind of stuff. Now, unfortunately, it has been spoiled to me that the show does get weird, but luckily that's the only thing that's been spoiled. The only thing that I can really show where any signs are pointing to is on the pervy side of things, which I question how far the show will take that. I know some people had problems with Kill la Kill because a lot of it had to do with clothing or the lack thereof, and I personally love Kill la Kill, but, I'm questioning it because I definitely don't want Darling in the Franxx to feel like they're treading upon the same type of territory. But, so far the show's felt very unique and very different overall, so I've really enjoyed it. And I currently have my faith put in Darling in the Franxx that it will blow my socks off, so to speak. Or blow my clothes off, I should say. Now, I'm also really enjoying that I feel like a lot of these characters have multiple sides to their personality. Someone told me that they believe the characters were pretty one note, but as I talked about last time with... I think his name's Mitsuru. I keep forgetting their names, I'm sorry, for more of the secondary characters. The guy with the slick back hair. I talked about last episode why I thought he had some multiple sides. This episode we got more of Kokoro, who's very quiet, a little bit more reserved and shy. She likes to please people, likes to be friends with everybody. But this time we got to see a little bit more of an aggressive side to her. We also saw more of Miku, who I'm going to now try to remember her name because she has like the pigtails like Miku. So I'm going to try to stick with that. But, Miku had, she's of course one of the more aggressive, tsundere-ish kind of characters. But, when you have a show that has a ton of characters, a whole squad of characters, and then some supporting characters past that, you're going to need, that's the reason why tropes exist in the first place, is because you need to, quickly be able to identify certain characters and kind of understand certain characters without the show fully delving deep into each of these characters overall, because sometimes that can get in the way of the story. So that's the reason why tropes exist. So I'm not okay with a show just using tropes just to use it, but when it's used in a very meaningful and very specific way, such as this show, then I think it's doing a good job. I also like that we got to see Hiro laugh. He's been lightening up each and every episode. He feels more and more connected to 02, and it was fun to watch him and 02 have fun. So I really enjoyed that. Now, they were in a lot of shock when Miku discovered that there was another squad that came before them, another Squad 13. I thought that was kind of interesting because I kind of thought right out the gate that it was already very obvious that like people will die a ton in this world and that their lives are put in a lot of danger, but they seem to be pretty surprised by that. I guess that has a lot to do with them being celebrated as heroes and being the way that the adults and everyone treats them. I guess they just didn't quite prepare them well enough in that way, which I could kind of see, why they would do that and stuff. But that was a little interesting to me. I kind of thought that they already knew how dangerous things were, but I guess not. So I noticed that they had the lilacs. I think that's how you pronounce it. Those are the flowers. It means friendship, fond memories, and youth. I think if that's what actually those flowers stand for, and those are actual flowers, then those are very fitting with the show. And I thought this episode had a beautiful ending. I love that Zero Two said something like, "Darling, grab onto me and never let go." I thought the way that she delivered that and the way that went into the music. I am a sucker for any time there is any like anime that has like a moment where it's like heartfelt and it like bleeds into the ending song. I love that. High School of the Dead episode 1 did that like to the best I've ever seen, and ReZero does that very, very well. And so I was happy to see that there because it's kind of like my Achilles heel for anime. I just love seeing that. And this episode is called Boys and Girls, Boys X Girls. I don't know I don't know how to pronounce the X actually. I mean, I'm sure someone listening could correct me on that and tell me. I think it's Boys and Girls is what the X stands for. Maybe it's Boys 2 Girls, Boys X Girls. I don't know. Anyways, I enjoyed this episode. I am still waiting for it to get super weird, which I'm sure it will soon. I mean, I'm not like waiting for it like, oh, I need this to happen because I'm not enjoying the show. I'm loving the show. I don't want to be spoiled about what's going to happen, and I just feel like if there's like major things that's supposed to happen, I hope I can get there soon enough before people spoil me. So far, so good though. I'm liking the series. I still love it a lot, and yeah, that's about all I have for this one. I don't really have any new theories. I think if anything, it just kind of confirms the theories I've had in the past. I still think Magma plays a huge role. I still think that Dr. Franxx is plotting against the adults, like Papa. I still think Papa's bad. I think that there's more to Zero Two than we think. I think that the biggest theory that I think is different than what I first said, I think in episode 2, was I don't think that this, like our main squad, is going to be the quote-unquote Levi squad. I don't think that they're going to just get eradicated. I do think that it's possible that they will die. I think it's pretty possible that a lot of them will die, but I don't think that they'll just all get wiped out and that that'll be the end of them. I think that they are really trying to I think they'll give them a lot of close calls, and I think that they will probably eventually die. But I think that this show is going to have very how am I supposed to word this? I think the show is valuing their lives a lot in a way that they know how important they are to the story. Sort of like with My Hero Academia, but it's probably somewhere between My Hero Academia and Attack on Titan. Like Attack on Titan kills off a ton of characters, or Kami ga Kill even, kills off a ton of characters. And some of those characters don't really get to breathe or really shine, and I think you kind of become numb to it. It's like, okay, I'm not gonna really grow attached to these characters because they're just dropping them like flies. But on the flip side of that, My Hero Academia, they are able to make a lot of scenes tense and make you put you at the edge of your seat, even though a lot of times there's not any grave danger that they're in. I do think that these characters are in more danger than My Hero Academia characters. But I do think that the writers are very smart, and I think they're going to play up the tensity and stuff, and not just kill off characters off the bat. And I think that was also shown at the beginning of episode 1, where that other girl was I thought she died, but she didn't, and I think they're saving her for later. I am very interested to see, she grew up with Squad 13, but she's no longer a part of them, so I wonder what she's doing. Maybe Oh, maybe they captured her and they're going to turn her into a Klaxosaur, or they're going to turn her into a 02 knockoff and make her like 03 or something. And she's going to have like Klaxosaur blood like injected into her, and she's going to be a bad guy or a bad girl, a bad girl. That sounds a lot like more naughty. Anyways, new theory unlocked. Anyways, that's it for this episode. I really appreciate you listening to me and ramble on about Darling in the Franxx. It's been a lot of fun. Catch you later. Stay awesome. Bye. Hello, welcome to episode 7 of Hello Darling, where we will be discussing episode 9 of Darling in the Franxx. This episode is called Triangle Bomb, which I assume is a reference to Ichigo, Hito, and Goro. And it's also sort of a reference to the bombs of the balloon Klaxosaur, which is pretty flippin' amazing. I find it so cool and interesting that this show has so many different designs for the Klaxosaurs, and they're able to take something like as childish as a balloon and make it absolutely terrifying. I can only imagine the different Klaxosaurs that we'll see throughout the series. I have a theory that we'll see a ultra mega beyond imagination crazy scary Klaxosaur by the end of the show. I'd be shocked if we did not. Anyways, this episode opens up where you see that they all have presents and they're all giving out gifts. It's a lot like Christmas. They don't call it Christmas in the show, but that's very much what it goes into, where everyone can ask Papa for a gift and then they get a gift based on what they ask for. And so Papa is basically Santa in this case, which is pretty interesting. We also have Papa declaring them as a ray of hope and all this stuff, and the show's actually taking a lot of its time building that up, which I find interesting. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to believe it or not. Like, I'm not sure if the average viewer, since I haven't talked with anyone else about this show, I'm not sure if, like, most people are supposed to feel like this is just going to be, like, a good, like, action shonen and, like, they're always going to win sort of thing. And maybe that's the case, but I really don't think that's the case. I'm really expecting things to go down and this to be pretty awful. So that's how I feel, but I'm not sure if that's the way the show should make me feel, or if it's trying to make me feel that way, or if it's trying to make me feel differently. After I'm done getting through some more episodes, or maybe through the series, I'd be interested in hearing your feedback on that to see if this is something that's unique to me, or how many other people felt the same way on this journey. I know a lot of people keep telling me that the show takes a weird turn and stuff. I know a lot of people were saying that it turns at episode 6, which is titled Darling in the Franxx, and honestly, I mean, I haven't really noticed a turn, but maybe it's because everything is sort of following the way that I expected. I don't know. I mean, I don't feel like I'm missing anything in particular. I mean, the show at least currently is still going along like in a similar path that I thought it would, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all. Like it still surprises me. Like, it surprises me in different ways, though. It's not surprising me in a way that I'm like, oh, I thought this show would be one thing and it's another thing. Like, this show is exactly what I thought it was going to be since episode 1, and it's currently still 9 episodes in. It still feels that way. But, maybe by the end, I'm sure that we're going to go through a lot more twists and turns before the end of the series. But I'm not sure, even if the twists get me, that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that I will feel betrayed by the show or just takes this direction that I don't agree with. But we'll see. I wonder how many people felt like it already took the turn or something, like it's something that they don't like. I don't know. I think it's awesome. Okay, there's so much to talk about. Okay, so at the beginning of this episode, I was thinking just how much I really like Goro as a character, and I'm surprised I've never heard anyone mention him. I mean, like I said, I haven't really talked with anyone about the show, but I've definitely heard people say that they love 02. I really like Goro. He's a really cool guy, and I'm happy that we did not lose him this episode. I kind of was thinking that we did, and I was like, no, he didn't get to tell Ichigo that, he loved her, but he did get to, so that's awesome. And, at this point, I kind of would, I mean, if he's going to die in the show, maybe, if he's going to die in the show, then I'm at least happy he got that off his chest. That makes me feel better. It makes me feel pretty good. I also noticed that they call this Klaxis are like a Gutenberg or something. It sounds very German. So basically, I think Nazis were responsible for the Klaxosaur. I'm just kidding by that. I don't think that they're actually tying the Klaxosaur into Germany, but I notice a lot of anime shows they like to tie in with different words from different areas and stuff, and I think that's really cool. I just happened to pick up on that. I was wondering when Goro got stuck in the Klaxosaur, how come, especially since Zero Two knew about the Klaxosaur's weakness up at the top, why they didn't just capitalize on that. But as the episode played out, I kind of understood the way the events were playing out and stuff, and they were ordered to retreat, and she's not going to want to just risk her life without proper instructions and just kind of being like, okay, sure, let's do it. She's not just going to jump in like the other people will. So that's fine. Now, I do wonder, do you think that Goro made the right call? Like, did Goro make the same call that you would make? You're in you're stuck in that balloon monster, the Gutenberg, and you can eject your partner, but that means that you won't be able to do anything. But it will pretty much guarantee their safety. But it'll also pretty much doom you. Your safety is very much compromised. I find that interesting because, maybe if he had kept her in there, they could have gotten out on their own. But he definitely wanted to guarantee that she'd be safe, which, just goes to show why I like Goro. But very interesting. I also like that not everyone gets along all the time. I really feel like these characters are pretty multi-dimensional, more so than I thought they would be. I think they're just really well written. They come across as a family, but they have their own different dynamics and different problems among each other. And so I like that Miku spoke out against Ichigo, and she was calling her out on her BS and why she thought she wasn't a good leader. And we've definitely seen Miku be kind of fairly hardcore and blunt with people. But it was good to see. This is her first time speaking up to Ichigo this way. And I'm not even saying it was deserved or anything. Like, I totally understand where Ichigo is coming from. But it was just nice to see that. Like, I don't like it when shows, like, everyone is just like, oh, we're all on the same page the entire time. Or, conversely, I hate it where everyone just seems to be arguing for the sake of arguing. I know The Walking Dead sort of feels like that sometimes, or at least it used to. I haven't finished the season, but anyways, this podcast isn't about that. Anyways, I just like the way that they do the dynamic in Darling in the Franxx. Also, actually, that's it. I'm glancing over my notes, and I think that's everything, guys. This episode was awesome. I'm still absolutely loving the show. I am ready to go ahead and start the next episode. It has been an amazing and fun ride. I still expect that things will turn horrible. I still expect Papa to be awful. I still think that Dr. Franxx is going to be a good guy that will help out the kids. I think that a lot of the team will be dead by the end of the series. But we'll see. Now, with Ichigo, I'm still... I guess I should talk about this. I don't know how they're going to do Ichigo and Goro and, that kind of love triangle thing that they got going on. I'm thinking that maybe Goro will die and Ichigo will then be like, I should have told you I loved you when I had the chance, since Goro almost didn't get to do that, but then he then was able to tell her that he loved her. That's my prediction, but that one's more of a soft prediction. That's just me kind of throwing that out into the ether, so we'll see about that. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and watch this next episode, and you just keep telling me that you like listening to my crazy theories and me discuss the episodes, because it makes me feel good, makes me feel better about, quote-unquote wasting time doing this. So thank you so much, take care, and stay awesome. Welcome to episode 8 of Hello Darling, where we will be discussing Darling in the Franxx episode 10, The City of Eternity. Ooh, very interesting. And I will say right off the top, I enjoyed this episode for taking its time to develop more of the world, the backstory, and the mystery of the characters and the world and what's going on. I am happy that this kind of took a backseat to the action. I personally love a good mixture of action and mystery, and I felt like, we've seen some awesome fights, so this one delved more into the mysteries going on within this world, and oh man, are they juicy, and I know that there has to be so much more to explore, which has just got me absolutely hooked to the show. So I want to say, I keep bringing up the point that these characters are really three-dimensional, and one reason is because I actually heard someone tell me that they actually thought that the characters were very one-note. So I went through and just told them my impressions of one of the background characters and why I thought that they were super three-dimensional, and I wasn't even getting into some of the more popular, more main characters, and they're like, you know what? Yeah, okay, forget that argument. And so it's just been kind of stuck in my mind where I'm thinking like, wow, like these characters are so three-dimensional. So this episode mostly featured Zorame, I believe is his name. Zorame is very interesting because he's one of my least favorites on the team, but I definitely have to give him credit. I don't typically like the loud, obnoxious, brash characters too much, but he has this very, on his exterior, he's yelling and he's complaining or whatever, but in his mind, it shows that he contemplates a lot. He has these, bad dreams and nightmares. He cries. He has feelings. It shows a lot more depth for that archetype of character than I'm used to seeing. So it got me more on board with that character. And even though I'm still probably not going to super enjoy, watching him yell and, flail his arms around and all that kind of stuff, it's nice to know he has this very human element to him. So I really enjoyed that. Now, I was just thinking this wasn't necessarily part of this episode, but when I was watching the opening, it reminded me that 02 can pilot her Franxx without her partner. Of course, that puts a lot of strain on her body and that hurts her. But her Franxx goes into the weird like a jaguar form. I don't know, like a cat form. And I was wondering if the others do that. Obviously they don't. With Goro in the last episode, it did not seem like he could do anything at all. But I wonder if it was just Ichigo, could she pilot it herself? I mean, we did see some of that, I think. Yeah, we did see some of that because they were telling her not to do that when she was unsuccessful with partnering with Hiro. So I wonder if any of the other Franxx can turn into big cats. I don't know. That was just I don't think they can. I think Stelixia, or however it's pronounced, I think that's a unique model, but I'm sure we'll see more about that in the future. So, and also I was thinking about how he's been absolutely fine piloting with 02, and I wonder if we're going to come back to that. I mean, I could see that being something that people were upset about because that was such a unique premise and stuff like that. But I mean, I wonder what makes him different. And he had the stuff growing over his heart. Now he has a scar there. I feel like we're going to get more information on that. I just don't know what that information will be exactly. Let's see. Also, they all got awards. They got to go into the city, and the people are wearing these funny mask, helmet, hat things, and it completely covers their eyes. So I guess maybe it's see-through, kind of like those, the morph suits that you can see through. I guess that's how people see. It's also interesting because the music was very beautiful, but it was also very haunting. So I think it tried to play this this heavenly vibe, but it also had this really dark undertone. I thought the music was done really well for setting the atmosphere of the city and the show itself. And I also noticed the guy didn't shake his hand, which later in the episode they mentioned something about the kids being infected. At first I thought he didn't shake his hand because the adults just disrespect the kids. And I do think that is the case for some of them. I mean, it was mentioned later on by the old lady that she had to use pet mode to have things work. The medical supplies or something like that work on the kids. So I do think that there are probably a large amount of adults that view these kids as pets or view them in a way that is beneath them. And that's probably something that had to be established too. If the kids are going out and dying, if they're turning into Klaxosaurs, which I still think is a very real possibility. But if they're doing if these awful things are happening to these kids, it's human nature to anytime like other humans are suffering, the best way that people deal with that is by trying to vilify them or making them out to be monsters or something less than human, in this case, pets. And if they're able to do that in their own minds, then they're able to be more okay with it, which is pretty messed up, but that's the way humans are. And I do think that, with this old woman that took Zorme in, I do think that, not every human or every adult feels the same exact way. I think that some of them have more empathy, they care about the kids and things like that, but they're just probably stuck in a really bad position, not able to help too much. I was actually a little surprised because with the way that they limit the kids so much, I honestly thought that the older lady that took Zorme in, I thought that she was going to be like in danger. Like if like people were just going to like we would just not see her again, they would like come in and kill her. I mean, maybe they did. I do feel like we'll see more from her in some way, but I don't know. Part of me thinks that like they would not like that at all, that she just took this kid in, because they were so like secretive, and they always keep them locked in, and this is the first time they ever let any kids out, and they were asking her, what did she say and all this stuff, but I don't know if they can just trust her word on it. Very interesting. I don't know. I feel like there's more to that, but we'll see. And obviously 02, I mean, she has to know more than she's letting on. I mean, she mentions that they're all going to die and all this stuff. I mean, maybe if the kids don't turn to Klaxosaurs, maybe she knows that the adults do something else with them. Like maybe she uses them. Oh, wait. What if she used them to make Franxx? Maybe that's why the Franxx have eyes. I'm not sure how much anime that is, or how much, like, if the Franxx were interpreted in like real life, I wonder like what the eyes would look like, because the Franxx all have like kind of humanish eyes. I don't think that would be the case, because I just don't see how that would work. But maybe it has something to do with that. And maybe since, like, if the Franxx were made of kids or out of people, then that would make sense why they're connected to, like, human emotion. So that would be very shocking and very crazy to see. That seems even crazier to me than the kids turning into Klaxosaur. Oh man, yeah, I just don't get how that would work, because they're so like, I don't know, it just makes more sense. Like I could see a kid like being mutated into like a monster, but like being mutated into like a palatable mech seems weird. Like that seems weirder to me. Huh. I just thought of that like as I'm talking to you guys. It wasn't like something I'd written down and been contemplated on. This is like my hot takes. Also, they mention that the city is lifeless. 02 does. And then Hito asks her what she means, and she's like, the city is lifeless. It means exactly what I said. And she's right. The city is very lifeless. We saw that with the old lady. She mentioned that she had a partner, but she had forgotten what his voice sounded like. And that's because he appears to just be in this tube, and he's experiencing all this joy and happiness, but it's not real. It's all artificial. And that's some like Black Mirror stuff. I haven't watched a whole lot of Black Mirror, but if I were to try to think of a Black Mirror episode, that seems like a prime candidate for Black Mirror episode. I do think, I have thought before, like that could be an issue, in real life, as working situations get worse, if war was starting up, getting bad and getting even worse, then who knows? I mean, if we had the technology where you could just put on some helmet and be happy, I'd be very, I feel like there would be a lot of people that would be stuck in that, and that would be a whole nother issue. So that's pretty interesting. I wonder how much more of that stuff we're going to dive into. I'm not sure if that is just there to sort of illustrate the way that the world feels and just sort of add more nuances to it, or if that's going to play a bigger part. I'm kind of on the fence about that. If I had to just take a wild guess, I'm going to say it's not, that particular thing isn't super important, other than the fact that it's trying to just display how much of a messed up city this is. I think that's probably the only reason why that's there, but we'll see. at the end, before Zorame was leaving, he was mentioning something to the old lady, saying, will you be my family? I mean, will you be my friend? And she said, that's just ridiculous because you are and it cuts off. Of course it cuts off. But the screen turned to the cool aspect ratio, and it looks super cinematic. And I was like, oh my gosh. But yeah, I wonder what she's gonna say. I mean, she couldn't say you are a Klaxosaur. I mean, I guess she could, but I don't think that's I don't think that's what she's gonna say, because 02 is known for having that in her blood. They are infected with something, so she could say you are infected. So that's why we could never be friends, or you're going to die, before you become an adult, or you are a clone. I know clones are super tropey within sci-fi, so I could definitely see clones playing a mix into this. But yeah, I think that covers all my points on this. As far as where I think the show's going to go, I think it's going to continue to get a little darker. I think that we're going to still build up these characters. I think we're going to see more dynamics between the team. We're going to see more struggles, conflicts within themselves, but with other people. But I do think that overall, we're going to see that Papa and all the people in his council are terrible people. There's going to be a bunch of adults in charge that are terrible. And I do think the kids, by the end of it, will discover something horrible, and they'll try to fight back, and then someone will die. It's very interesting. Yeah, well, anyways, I'm excited to watch more. So, yeah, let me get back at it, and I'll keep doing these episodes. Be sure to comment. Let me know that you're enjoying, that you're still listening out there. It definitely motivates me and makes me happy to keep doing this. It's been a very interesting process, so I appreciate it. Remember, as always, stay awesome. Bye. Welcome to episode 9 of Hello Darling, where we will be discussing episode 11 of Darling in the Franxx. This one is called Partner Shuffle, which made me very nervous to read when I saw the title. I was like, oh my gosh, are they all going to change? We need 02 to be with Hiro and all this stuff. We need Ichigo to be with Goro. So I was pretty nervous. But luckily they didn't do the full partner change. And interestingly enough, I thought it was going to be a mandatory thing for some reason. I wasn't sure why, but I didn't like the direction I didn't like the direction I thought that was going to go. However, this ended up being an episode a lot about Mitsuru, but it also had a lot of Kokoro and her partner, bigger guy, Futasho, something like that. This episode actually really touched me more than I feel like it would most people. I could see this very much being an episode that's one of my favorites, and most people just kind of watched it as if it was a normal episode. It really got to me because I haven't really cared that much about this Mitsuru character. I mean, he's been alright, but I haven't really loved this character. But seeing his backstory and seeing, why he's the way he is and how people have failed him, and he's had faith in people and he's had hope in people, and it's all been betrayed. That's something that I personally really connected to, because I've definitely went through a lot of friendships or a lot of people in my life where obviously it wasn't that I wanted to be a pilot with them, but there were promises that were made, or different things that they told me I could count on them or rely on them in some way, and then unfortunately that wasn't the case, and he's had bad dreams about that, and I have bad dreams about that all the time. It's something that's been very hard for me to live with, to be honest, and I didn't expect to be talking about this on this podcast at all. But yeah, it's something that it honestly got me teary-eyed watching it. I mean, it honestly speaks to me on a level that this is probably so far my favorite episode. It's not enough to make him my favorite character necessarily. I'm not exactly sure who my favorite character is, but I do like that character a lot more now. And I feel like a lot of other shows especially nowadays, they're trying to be like super edgy and stuff. So they just try to do that by killing off a ton of characters. I feel like if this was one of those shows, they would have done it like back when he piloted with like 02. They would have been like, oh man, she's so like strong and like she's so deadly that she killed this like rookie pilot guy. He would have died all the way back then just for the sake of the show being kind of edgy and stuff. But I'm so glad that they kept him around this long so they could further develop his character as well as all the other characters too. Now, I've found it very interesting that Kokoro chose to pilot with Mitsuru, especially after making the promise to her partner. Like, it seemed very bad in a way, like to have that promise made. But I also kind of understand where she's coming from, and I know that she's trying to be there for everyone as opposed to just be there for that one partner. So I'm very interested to see where her character goes. It also kind of reveals more depth to the type of character that she is, because she even said, like, I'm not like everyone thinks I am. I'm not the sweetest, nicest, can't hurt anyone kind of person. Like, even I've betrayed someone and I've broken a promise before, and that's just, what we do. Now, she said as kids, because they see adults as being perfect. But as we all know listening to this, that this isn't just a kid's problem. This is a problem. This is just being human nature. Like we're all going to make promises that we can't keep. And even with me being betrayed and hurting people and stuff, I know that I've definitely hurt people. And the best that I feel like you can do is to acknowledge that and then to try to do your best from that point and just know if you hurt someone to, tell them that you're sorry and try your best. You can never make everything perfect or make everything right, but you can do your best. And, man, this is a powerful episode for me. I'm just saying, like, it was really good. I almost didn't think I had time to watch it, but I was like, I just want to get that one episode in before I have to go leave for an appointment, and so glad I did, because man, I'm very excited to see where this moves on from here. I'm not sure if it seems like we've been getting episodes that kind of dive deeper into each of the characters. I'm not sure if this one counted as just sort of like the Mitsuru episode, or if we're going to get one of Kokoro and her partner. We also had the girl that wanted to try to use a pistol and pistol combination with Ichigo, which I'm not sure if that comes out of her maybe like secretly being like, maybe she's like a lesbian, or maybe she's just, smart and like trying to think of other ideas, or maybe she's both. So I didn't think that would work. I mean, because I feel like they would have already known if that would work or not, but I guess it didn't hurt to try, so, that worked out. And I don't know, it also seems like maybe, I know it's very interesting how much Mitsuru looks up to Hito, so I'm interested to see how that plays out. I'm hoping before he dies. I'm not sure if he'll die, but I feel like a lot of these characters will. But I hope that if he does die, before he dies, he's able to get a lot of the stuff off his chest, and we're able to see how Hito reacts to all of this, because I think that'd be a good moment in the show. Also, I noticed that they mentioned Gutenberg, and it was not the giant balloon thing, so we can definitely have, it's more, okay, so the Gutenberg is more of the size of the Klaxosaur as opposed to the specific type of Klaxosaur. So it makes me wonder if they have specific names, or maybe if they are so varied that they don't really have names for them, because like if they named the balloon one, for example, they wouldn't really ever see that one again probably, so there's not really that much of a point to naming it, possibly. I'm really into naming things though, so I'd love to, I mean, I don't know, I think I'd love to name it, but yeah, apparently it's the size. And then I think the small ones they called like Conrads or something, which reminds me of this guy that got on my nerves because I was playing in a tournament and he kept trying to speed up the game and stuff, even though I was thinking. But anyways, that's a whole nother tangent. I also noticed that whenever they switched the partners, the Franxx seemed to be chosen by the pistols, as opposed to the pilots or the guys or whatever they're called. Nothing really important with that. I just happened to notice that and thought that was interesting. I don't really think there's any significance to that necessarily. I mean, maybe it's the Franxx kind of have a more of a feminine look to them. So, maybe there's that. And then the last thing, I think it was in one of my recent episodes, I was wondering if the other Franxx can go into those like feral modes, which we now know is called stampede mode, which is when the girl has to put all the strain and pressure onto herself and then use the Franxx by herself. I find it very interesting. It goes into this like feral mode. I don't really know why that is or if they'll explain that or anything. It's a very interesting concept, but I like that we did get more answers with that each of these Franxx can do that. Or I would assume so. I mean, we haven't seen it with the other Franxx, but I'm very certain that's the case. It also appears that you can't do that if you just have the guy pilot. You have to have the pistol, which, I mean, she's down on her knees, so it makes sense that, well, I guess that makes sense. Okay, I think it goes into like a feral kind of mode because the girl's on her knees and she's kind of in more of the like a more of an animalistic type nature. So I think that that's the idea behind that. Okay, cool. I just connected that in my head. And yeah, I mean, the last point I have written down is Mitsuru talking about having faith in others and how he feels betrayed by that and stuff. So I've already talked about that in pretty good length, but yeah, man, I mean that's a very heavy topic. I mean, am I alone in this? I mean, I'd like to hear your comments. I mean, that'd be a good thing that you guys could comment without spoiling the episode, the future episodes for me is, have you ever felt betrayed? I mean, you would think that'd be like, oh yeah, definitely. But I actually have some friends. They tell me, they've been friends with their group of friends for a long time, and while they may feel, somewhat betrayed here and there, it's nothing that's been like so long lasting and permanent. So, how betrayed have you been? Have you felt like you've, wavered on losing faith in your friends or people close to you? I a lot of times, put myself out there doing a lot of things, and it can be scary, and it can feel very lonely for me to, not only do this podcast, but I'll do tons of events and I'll do talks and I'll go out places and stuff, and it can feel very lonely being by myself, and especially if I have, a group of people telling me that they'll be there for me, and then at the last second they all flick out on me and stuff. It does hurt and it does get with me. Obviously, through betrayals and stuff, I've been through a lot worse than that. Those kind of things don't destroy friendships, but I've had people steal from me. I've had people lie behind my back or tell other people things that weren't true and all kinds of stuff. So let me know where you've come from that. Let me know if this was an episode that stood out to you, or if this is just kind of another good episode for you. I'm still wondering. I feel like for a lot of people, I've been talking briefly about this anime to people that come into the pop culture store I work at, where we sell some anime stuff, and a lot of people said that they dropped off on this anime pretty quickly, and it just blows my mind, honestly, because I think that this anime is just so smart. I think that like everything is written so well, like almost like to like it almost seems like to a genius level. Like I mean, I don't know if I'm just like looking too much into this. I mean, that's kind of my job here talking to you guys about it. But man, it seems like it's just like I don't know, it just seems so well crafted. I mean, it seems like every detail put in there is so intentional, which I think makes for a great piece of art. But that's just my thoughts on it. We'll catch you next time, or I'll catch you next time. Not sure why I said we. But yeah, you guys take care. Stay awesome. Bye. Welcome to Hello, Darling, where we will be discussing, you guessed it, Darling in the Franxx, episode 12 today. And this was a interesting episode. They get to go back to the garden where they have all the kids, and this is where they apparently raise and test all the kids and all that stuff. It's all snowy, and I love the outfits of the different characters. I think this is probably a reference to the Garden of Eden. Biblical references tend to show up a lot in anime. Now, I noticed in the intro that the partners seem swapped. I'm not sure if they had just started doing that after the partner swap episode, or if that's always been that way and I never caught it. If I had to guess, I'd say that they just switched it. But, interesting little tidbit for them to change. The nines were introduced in this episode, but pretty much none of them had anything to really say aside from the one that looks like Michaela, or whatever his name is, from Seraph of the End. He very much reminds me of him as far as the way he looks. Yeah, so this episode is actually pretty hard for me to talk about because it just kind of left me... like a lot of the previous episodes were very, almost like, I don't want to say self-contained, but they started off with something and then they kind of ended with something. Like a lot of times it was like, this is my problem, or I need to get this off my chest, or I'm having these dreams, and by the end of it, it was like this was resolved in this way. This one still feels very unresolved, like they're in the middle of everything, so it's kind of hard for me to, like, my brain's still just sort of processing it differently. Now, I'm wondering if 02 wants to kill the Klaxosaurs to try to distance herself from it as much as possible, because I know in a lot of different fiction stories, if someone is like a half-blood of something, or if they have something that would tie their allegiance into something else, you'll have the factions say like, hey, well, if you are really on our side, if you're really wanting to be us, then you need to make sure you kill them to prove your loyalty to us. I wonder if that's sort of her mentality behind that. Or maybe she was promised that if she kills all of them or something, then she'd be able to revert or become a human. I don't think that's the case. I think it's more of the former thing. I think it's just more of the, if she proves herself enough, then maybe that will make her feel more human. I do also wonder if she was born human, or, and she was like modified, or if she was born the way she currently is. If I had to guess, I'd say, actually, I don't know. That's a tough one. I guess if I had to guess, I would say that I think at first I thought she was modified, but I think there could be a scenario in which that she was born this way. They also mentioned genetic transformation, which they were saying that Hito could become something like her, which, I mean, that's not the best case scenario, but it's not as bad as my theory on them becoming Klaxosaurs. So I think maybe in the show you're supposed to be like, oh my gosh, that would be horrible or something, but yeah, not as bad as just becoming. I mean, you're becoming a monster in a sense, but at least you're not like, I don't know, you're still intelligent. They also mentioned that kids are human. So, because they were like, if he gets genetically modified, he might not even be human anymore. So I'm like, okay, so they're humans. I'm not sure if clones count as humans or not. I haven't watched that much sci-fi with clones to know. I mean, I guess they would be clones of a human, so they'd still have the human genetics and everything. Because, one of my theories is that maybe they're clones, but we didn't see, because I think if they were clones, we probably would have saw, whenever they were in the laboratory, we would have saw that they all looked, like all the kids looked the same or something, but we didn't see that, so I don't really think they're clones. Interesting stuff. And they said that she's a monster in disguise, and she had some sort of red version of herself, and it looked like it, I don't know, I don't quite understand how it came out. Like, it kind of looked like it came out like in a spiritual kind of way, but it very much had a physical form. But it didn't look like it ripped out of her skin or something. Huh. Very interesting. And then she also mentioned something about seeing her original darling, which, wonder what that meant and who that is. I mean, she did have a lot of partners that had died, and I could see that maybe she fell in love with one, especially maybe the first one, and she didn't know it would be an issue that they would die because it would be her first partner, and then they die, and then, it made her feel like a monster. I mean, that'd be a horrible thing to go through, especially with having so many people die. It'd sort of make you, I guess, it'd sort of make you feel a little more immune to the whole process. So I can only imagine the horrors and the terrible things and feelings that she goes through. It's nice to have Ichigo try to talk to her, but of course, 02's going through a lot, so it didn't go too well. But yeah, that's about all I have for this episode. I'm honestly just left wanting to watch more, so I'm gonna go ahead and press that play button to watch more. Be sure to what should you comment on today? Would you let's see. Oh yeah, also I almost forgot they're searching for Naomi, I believe is her name. I do think still that they're gonna have a big reveal with her. I'm not entirely sure what the big reveal will be, but it'll probably be horrifying. Probably be horrifying, but we'll see, won't we? Yeah, well, that's it for this episode. Be sure to comment your thoughts on my thoughts, and that would be appreciated. All right, guys, stay awesome. Bye. Welcome to Hello, Darling, Second Thoughts. This is going to be a little bonus for you. Basically, I have been just kind of steering some thoughts in my head based on episodes 9 and 10 that I watched earlier today. And it's always hard for me to decide whether I should record these immediately after an episode, which is what I usually do, or to wait a little while, maybe the day before I record it. Wait a day until I record this. Now, if I record it immediately after, it's the freshest in my mind, and that seems to be the best because I tend to get most of the details. However, I am more of an analyst, and sometimes I like to just sit there and think about things for a little bit and just have it stir in my mind. And so unfortunately with this way I forget about some things, and in other ways I think more on other I think about some things. So I wanted to cover some things that have happened in episodes 9 and 10 that I touched upon, but I wanted to dive deeper on some things I actually feel a little different about. For example, the guy that was smiling as he was in his little chamber, I had just connected in my mind that maybe the reason why the city is lifeless or seemingly lifeless is because people aren't living, and the reason why most people aren't living is because this is a much bigger problem. I said in a previous episode that I feel like this guy laying here, that probably is just to show how bad the world is, but I think it actually, and I said it probably didn't have much more consequence than that, but I'm having second thoughts about it. If I had to guess right here and right now, I would say that a lot of people hate the world that they live in, so a lot of people are doing what that old man is doing. I think the old woman even gave a hint to us where she said that she's more classic or something like that. I can't remember what she's talking about exactly, but I think she's one of the exceptions where most people, especially her age, they don't like the way life is, so they're all doing what they're doing, which then led me to my next theory, which I have not discussed yet. But I believe that while Papa and the other grown-ups are going to be an antagonist in this series, I do think that they will be more three-dimensional and will have a reason for everything that they've done, and even a reason to the point that you might even find yourself agreeing to the actions that they have taken, at least to some extent. But I do think that our protagonist will still you'll be on the protagonist side where you'll still think like, okay, Papa and these people have to go down, they have to lose, but I can at least see how they got there. They're not just trying to become immortal or whatever it is, or at least if they are, it's not without good reason. Maybe they're trying to become immortal because they're all very sick, so they're trying to defeat this disease, which that could be a whole nother theory. But I do think that just like the show has shown me before with each of its main characters, one by one, I do think that this whole plot is a lot more three-dimensional, and I want to give the writers credit because I do think that there are a lot more twists and turns. I do think, it's already one twist at this point, at least, to have Papa and the adults to be enemies, because by episode 10, there is no clear sign of that. I mean, this is clearly a theory, but if I'm correct about that, then that would be one twist. But I want to take it further and say that not only will they become an enemy, and not only will the Klaxosaurus still remain an enemy, but you will see that Papa and his people did everything. They came at it from a logical place, at least. They came at it from an area that you can sympathize with. And then I do think the Klaxosaurs will definitely they have to have much more to them than just being these beasts underground. They have to be made from kids, made from humans, something that happens whenever you're infected and it turns into something worse. I don't know exactly what it is, and if you're wondering, like, if that turns out to be true and you're like, wow, Vincent, like, I'm surprised that you know that, or that's what you're guessing already or whatever, because I've guessed that a while back. I just seen a lot of anime, and I mean, what really comes to mind is like, well, I don't want to say the anime in case I don't want to spoil you guys of different anime shows, but I've seen a lot of different anime. I run a lot of role-playing games, and I like to do twists and turns and crazy events and stuff like that. So I always try to think from the frame of mind of a writer, what would be the crazy thing that would still make sense for the story, because you don't want to betray the audience in a way that doesn't feel like the story should allow that to happen. Luckily, since this world is so unique and so different, I feel like they're allowed to get away with a lot of stuff because we don't understand the way the world works quite yet. But, as long as they don't break their own rules, basically, the show will be golden. And I'm super excited for what I'm seeing, and those are my second thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this little bonus. Let me know what you think about me doing bonuses, and let me know if you can hear these sirens in the background. Hopefully everything's okay. But yeah, you guys take care, and as always, stay awesome. Bye. You hear that? That is the sound of my anxiety. And yeah, this is a bonus episode because I am just... Okay, so for reference, I went to an event today. It's supposed to be a really fun board gaming event. Turns out it got rescheduled, sort of. They gave the wrong time and date. But I ended up talking with this guy, and he was mentioning how much he loved Darling in the Franxx until they reached this turning point. And he didn't tell me when this happens, but he did tell me I wasn't there yet. Like, he told me I haven't reached this point yet. And he said it ruined the show for him, and he stopped watching it. And I've kind of heard that, not in that much detail, but I've kind of heard things that basically, from other people, that meant the same thing. And honestly, I am so nervous hearing that, because if I had to give a rating on the show, like if the show ended... or if the show continued being as good as it currently is, and it went on to, say, episode 24, I could honestly see myself giving this show, I don't know, like at least a 9 out of 10. Maybe even a 10 out of 10. I love this show. Like, I love this show. And to know that so many people I felt this affected by it in this kind of way, where they dropped the show after being like, I don't know, 75% of the way through the show, or at least halfway through the show, it's crazy to me. And it makes me very nervous. Like, I've never felt this nervous about any show, I don't think, in my entire life. I feel like almost sick to my stomach. And I would go straight home and watch it right now, but it's weird. Like, my living situation currently doesn't make that easy, because I have only certain times with my girlfriend, and I would have to be forsaking that time with her to watch it. And also, there's worries that if I watch it on the TV, then she'll hear it and all this stuff, and I don't want her to be spoiled for it, because if it stays this amazing, I would definitely want to watch this through with her at some point in the future. But man, I feel so nervous, and maybe at the very least, maybe the silver lining is, with all my nerves being like this distraught, maybe it won't be as bad. Like, maybe it's still going to be horrible, but maybe I'm kind of preparing myself. Like, that sort of happened to me with the Red Wedding. Not to get into too many details for Game of Thrones, but the Red Wedding is a major event in Game of Thrones. It's one of the most known events that people quit watching the show for. And one of the characters that's affected by the Red Wedding is my favorite Game of Thrones character. Like, they are my favorite character in Game of Thrones, or maybe my second favorite. But anyways, I like that character more than most people. But I was actually able to handle that moment better overall than most people. I actually watched that episode, and then I went to go do a Magic the Gathering draft, and then won. Like, I just went straight to the Magic the Gathering draft afterwards, with that still on my mind, and I somehow managed to win. But it was okay. And what actually bothered me more in Game of Thrones is a fight with this guy named the Mountain. And yeah, it was pretty brutal. And it wasn't even because of the character where something happens to him. It was more of just the reaction, the unexpectedness, and how horrifying it was. And really, when I think about Darling in the Franxx and how it could plummet and ruin the show for me, the only thing I can think about is not necessarily if the characters die, but if it is absolutely horrifying. Like, if it is, like, traumatizing for me to see, like, I would have to almost see, like, maybe their skin wrinkling up and, like, pus coming out as they're screaming bloody murder, and, like, their eyes are bursting out of their face or something. Like, it'd have to be, like, very horrific for me to, like, really be affected in a negative way for this show, because I really do not want to see that. I can handle characters dying, and I can handle, some gore and stuff like that, but I really just don't want to see these characters twisted up in that way. It's funny too, because you know exactly what I'm going to be seeing that I'm talking about, but I don't know what I'm going to be seeing, which is a very awkward position to be in. Kind of like the pilots and the pistols. Ayo! Yeah. Anyways, I just wanted to share my thoughts on that, get out this little bonus episode real quick. Hope you enjoy it. As always, stay awesome. Welcome to Hello Darling episode. Well, I'm not sure what episode this will be, but I know we're talking about episode 13, which is The Beast and the Prince, which to me is like a spin on the Beauty and the Beast. Though this has, this definitely has some drastic differences. Now, I want to go ahead and preface this with, it's been an entire day, a full 24 hours since I've seen this episode. This is the first time that I've been this long without going ahead and recording my thoughts on the episode. So we'll see how this goes. For one, I noticed that talking about, me maybe forgetting details or whatever, Hiro forgets things. He forgets promises. And that's something that stood out to me. Though, before you reach into the comments and say this, I did notice that it seemed like the city or the government, whatever you want to call them, it does seem like they definitely had something to do with that as far as tampering with his thoughts and his mind. So it's not his fault, which is probably a good thing, because, man, it would be pretty awful if he was just that bad at remembering everything. Now, I have written here, being different is scary, and that was something that Ichigo said, which, if I just read you that quote, you would think Zero Two said that. But no, Ichigo said it, and she said it in reference to the fact that she was the only one that had emotions left out of all the kids. Aside from the people, like Hito and stuff. But a lot of the kids just stopped having emotions, and she was crying, she was getting upset, and she felt weird and different for that. And I think as humans, we all sort of do that to some capacity. I think some people more than others, we start viewing ourselves in ways that's different from everyone else, and it makes us feel excluded. And so in a lot of ways we try to find similarities where, maybe you feel like no one that likes Darling in the Franxx, so here you are listening to this, podcast I'm doing, and so we're bonding over things that we have in common. And this is something that Ichigo is lacking in her life, and that can feel horrible, being a human and not connecting in that way, because connection is very important for us. So I definitely empathized with her there, and she's definitely grown on to me as a character. I really like Ichigo. And actually, I really like all the characters. I mean, at least all the main kids. I could use a little bit more reasons to like Miku and Futsunashi, or the bigger guy that likes to eat a lot, whatever his name is. It now makes sense too why Zero Two is searching for books, because she's either trying to find the book that she had when she was a kid, which I assume is what she's trying to do, or she's trying to find other books that are similar to it, other books that she deems as beautiful. I haven't even talked about her looking through the books and the pages and all that in the previous episodes that we've seen that. Not really sure why. I mean, I never really talked about that one guy that shows up that I said looks like Michaela from Seraph of the End, because he shows up at like the end of episode 5, and I just completely forgot to talk about him, even though that was definitely a detail that we all saw. Now it was interesting because in this episode we got to see Zero Two as a kid, as an adorable, monstrous little girl. Maybe I shouldn't say monstrous. Maybe that would get me in trouble. But it was definitely very interesting. She couldn't speak English or Japanese or whatever language you're watching this in. She could only kind of grunt and growl, and she was, by like human standards, some sort of monster. And but in a lot of ways she was more human than a lot of the people were acting, or the kids were even being, after going through all this therapy and all these treatments where they lost their emotions. I mean, I think empathy and human emotion, all that kind of stuff, is one of the main things that makes us human. So in some ways, I actually think Zero Two is more human, though we will see. I know that I mentioned earlier on in the series that I didn't feel like Zero Two was much of a monster. I mean, I can see like her monster-like qualities, but she's very. I could tell that she was very concerned with not being a monster, and I know if it were me in Hito's position, I'd be like, you're not a monster. In this episode, they definitely showed more of her monster aspects, where more people would probably think like, oh dang, like she's a monster. And I mean, we have to wait and see what else happens and what else we see more. I mean, it also matters if you're trying to speak in like strict terms or definitions. I mean, it kind of gets weird, because it's like, you're not a monster, but I mean, you could still technically be another race of people, though, or different, be categorized differently, which I know she probably wouldn't want to be, but I don't know. It's a scientific mess, and I'm not a scientist, but I don't think that's necessarily what's important. It's just more important to notice the humanity within someone, the feelings that they have, and being there for them. Which, it seems like Hito's doing a really good job with that. Whenever he was younger, he licked her wounds and got some of that blood in his system, which is how I assume he's been surviving this entire time. I think that's pretty much a given. And I also noticed, now, guys, check this out. I think this is a pretty nice catch on my part. I don't think everyone would have seen this. At the end, it starts playing, or it starts showing the different words of the book from The Beast and the Prince. And I'm sure everyone sees that pretty much. But did you notice that it says, "Grab onto me and never let me go," or whatever the quote was that Zero Two said to Hito earlier on? It's a direct quote from this book that she loved as a kid. I thought that was very interesting. Also, it did the same thing that I told you guys that I love, where it plays the ending, like it plays like music as they're like talking and as the show's reaching its ending, and it did it beautifully, and I loved it. And I told you guys that when I hear that, it's just perfection. I love it, and it was executed brilliantly this episode. I also love that it took place with a lot of snow and like the snow garbs and stuff. I'm not sure why, but I always love it in anime when I see the characters change their outfits, especially when it changes into like snow attire and there's just like snow and stuff. I think there's just something so pretty about snow, and I love seeing it in this episode. So that was really cool for me to see as well. I think that covers everything that I wanted to talk about from this episode. Hopefully it's not like some of the other episodes where I start thinking back to all these things and I'm like, man, I forgot to talk about this and that and this. Speaking of which, the one thing I do want to cover real quick before I get way off episode-wise is back to Mitsuru when he acts very cool, calm, and collected, and then the bigger guy was getting all upset. He was sobbing and crying and punching and all this stuff. And Hito makes a point. He says, "Hey, can you not see what this guy is going through?" And it was like all the people's attention was directed towards him because he was being more outwardly emotional, whereas Mitsuru's been dealing with pain for much longer, at least from what we can see. We at least know that he's dealing with a lot more than he lets other people know, and that other people do know. And he's getting, not only has he been dealing with that, and that's painful, but he's getting the short end of the stick in this case too, because everyone thinks he's okay because of the way he's handling things. And that's something that really stood out to me and something that I really cared about, and I kind of touched adjacent to that and how it related to Mitsuru, but I never spoke about that specific point that I thought was very interesting, is this idea that other people will get help and attention because of the way that they cry out for attention or the way that they show their pain, whereas, like for example, someone could be hurting themselves and then show other people that, and people might be like, oh, well, they're just craving for attention. And yeah, it might be true that they're craving attention, but that's not necessarily a terrible thing. Like, people crave attention just being people. Like, it's human nature to crave attention. It's something that we all desire and that we all need and that we all want. And someone that's going to harm themselves and then show people that, it's a sad way for them to get attention, but, it'll, in a lot of ways, they can get some support that they need from that. But if someone chooses not to harm themselves, not to tell anyone, not to show anybody, a lot of times it's scary because they can just end up doing something that you wish that they didn't, and then they might be gone from this world, and that you never even knew how much pain that they're going through, which is very sad and not the way I wanted to end this episode. But I did want to touch on that subject because I felt like it was handled really well in the episode. And it really means something to me when an episode can kind of lightly touch on something and then really resonate with me in multiple ways and then have me think about it in a lot of different aspects of my life. And I just think that's really cool, and this show does a really good job of that, and I think that's why it was a really good job for me to choose this for this podcast. So thanks for listening. I'm going to go ahead and watch the next episode. Wish me luck. I hope I continue liking this series. Thank you for listening. Be sure to comment some of your favorite moments from this episode. I'm sure this episode stood out to you because it stood out to me as being one of my favorites. So hopefully it's the same for you. And yeah, you guys take care and stay awesome. Bye. Welcome to Hello Darling, where we will be talking today about episode 14, Punishment and Confession. Now, I think that it's pretty obvious that the punishment is to 02 for hurting Hito, and she has to now leave and find another partner. And the confession is from none other than Ichigo, who confesses her love for Hito as Goro watches, and it makes me sad. Which is a very true illustration about how you can have feelings for someone and they can have feelings for someone else, and love is just a big, huge, complicated mess, unfortunately, but that's the way life is, isn't it? Wow, okay, so the beginning of this, we get a reaction from 02 where she says something to the effect of, wait, he was the kid that I hung out with, did all this stuff with, and I was thinking, that actually confused me because I thought the reason she was so convinced of those two being partners was because she knew that Hito was the kid from her childhood. I thought that she knew that, and that's why she acted the way she did, because I don't think that we've seen her act that way with other people. Like, it seems like the other partners that she's had, she just uses them to fight with, and that's how it's described as well. Like, everyone else says, you just use them, etc. It seems though like her relation with him was different, and I was like, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense why it's different. But in this episode, she seemed shocked. Maybe she thought it was him, but wasn't 100% certain. But then again, she was like, she mentioned, like, what have I been doing this whole time? I shouldn't have done this and that. Maybe she thought it was him and then started doubting it. Like, maybe she believed it. I don't know. That's confusing to me. Maybe if it's not spoilers, you can comment and let me know your thoughts on that. Because it's a little puzzling to me. I may have just missed something. I mean, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, and I woke up really early to watch this, so maybe that's a part of it. I'm not sure, but that did confuse me a little bit. I did find it nice that when they went to go check on them, Ichigo, of course, ran for Hito, but Goro asked if Zero Two was okay. Like, he's always asking, like he's always making sure like the one that's like left out is doing okay, and he's just such a nice guy, and I feel really bad for him as far as like with Ichigo, because if only Ichigo could just have the feelings that she has for Hito, but for Goro, because that would work out so well. Man, it bothers me so much. It's also cool seeing Ichigo take up a bit more of an assertive role, even though it kind of led to maybe not the best situation. Maybe it would have been better had she not been so assertive, but it's cool seeing that different facet to her. I mean, she definitely cares, and usually she's a little bit more passive, but it's cool that she can set her foot down if she feels like she needs to. And it also just sees more of her character, which, I mean, we've gotten a little bit more from Miku, just in the sense that we saw that she was very sweet and kind in this episode because she knew how serious the situation was. So I'm glad they didn't do the typical anime thing where they just keep her nagging and yelling and acting stupid the whole time. Not stupid, but you know what I'm saying. Also, we finally had Hito and Mitsuru have their little conversation. Didn't really equate to as much as it didn't really reach the emotional height that I really wanted. It was just kind of like a wham bam. All right, we're done talking. It was still nice. I'm happy it was there. Mitsuru was like, yeah, I had actually forgotten about it until just now, which we all know that's a super lie. But it was still nice to see how their interaction was, and then I think at this point Mitsuru might be able to forget and forgive a little bit. We'll have to see if he manages to make it that that long. Also, I've noticed that Zero Two has longer horns. Does that mean? And also, her eyes were glowing, so maybe the more she taps into her beast form, the more of a beast she looks like. I mean, maybe we'll even see her where her skin won't look the same color; it'll turn red as she gets more into like a monster, which I forgot to mention last time. There was the moment where I couldn't tell if she was like coming out of her skin or if she like was projecting some sort of image. I guessed it was the latter, and I think that was true. It seems like that was the case. It seems they mentioned in this episode that they were questioning if it was some sort of hallucination based on their bond between each other, which is very interesting. I wonder if other pilots can have a similar reaction in some way where they can start seeing each other's thoughts or something if they're super connected in some way. Not entirely sure, but that'd be very interesting to explore. I do think that's all I have for this episode. I feel like, let's see, I feel like I'm running out of, now I don't want to say like running out of things to talk about, but like, I think I'm just like, I'm so like wanting to hit play on the next episode. It's a little hard for me to like talk about. I don't know. It's a little bit of that, and I think it's a little bit of a lot of, I mean, I've already kind of made like a lot of crazy and bold predictions that it's, I can't, I don't really have any other predictions. I mean, from here, I mean, these characters have lasted a long time. When I first started this series, I thought they were going to die pretty quickly, because a lot of times when I hear people being shocked or like, "Oh my gosh, can't believe that happened, man," I don't know why people talk like that, but it's I feel like it's usually out of just like characters getting slaughtered and stuff, but they can be a little tired and tropey at this point. So it's nice to see these characters actually develop, and I'm way happier with the story being this way. Now I'm a little worried still about the crazy thing that's supposed to happen and turn everyone off from the series. I mean, at this point, I just finished watching episode 14. Got like 10 episodes left, something like that, and it's not too. I'm over halfway, and I still haven't reached this point. So, I mean, I just wonder how bad this has to be for people to get almost finished with the series, and then see this moment and just say, nope, not watching anymore, because this show is just so good, and I can't imagine that it will get to a point where it's terrible, because it is like. I mean, I honestly think this show is like 10 out of 10 material. I mean, it's so good. So I really hope that my mind doesn't change on that, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe it's going to be episode 15 where the quote-unquote magic happens. But yeah, until then, be sure to comment. Let me know what you're thinking of my different reactions and reviews and discussions about each and every episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And be sure to, as always, stay awesome. Bye. Welcome to Hello Darling, episode number something. I believe this will probably end up being episode 13, which means that we are talking about episode 15, which was really amazing. Now, this episode felt like a finale because it just skipping ahead to the ending, I mean, we had Strelitzia come back, Hito and 02 made their reunion, they had the big awesome fight, they took out this gigantic Klaxosaur to a size that they have never even seen before, that no one, or at least anyone in that plantation had ever seen before, and they destroyed it very easily, and it was just a crazy, just a crazy moment, and of course they had to play the amazing opening song with the ending. It was like pure straight 3.5 minutes of some of the best animation I've ever seen, and one of my favorite episodes and just moments in any anime I've ever seen in my entire life. It was amazing. It is very interesting, though, that this is not the ending. This is episode 15. We still have a handful of more episodes to go, and they definitely ended this one on a bit of a cliffhanger, having some sort of giant hand come out of the, I believe they call it the Grand Crevasse. Just a heads up, I did not take any notes for this one. I just sat back and enjoyed it all. And yeah, so, man, okay. So, rewinding things a little bit, we saw the Nines, and we saw that they are... It looked like all the men, or all the people, I'm not sure if they're actually human. Actually, I think we know they're not human. I'm pretty sure they've mentioned that before. So we're not sure exactly what they are. Like, they're artificially made, maybe. Maybe they are the artificially created people. But whatever it may be, it seemed like the male-looking ones were the ones that were being the pistols, whereas the females were the ones behind them. Yeah, so I mean, it's not really, it's just something to note. I guess they're just genetically different in some way. It'd be interesting to see a little bit more about them. And then we have, like, I wonder how they differ from 02 and how they're similar to 02. I'm not sure if they have Klaxosaur blood in them or not. They definitely seem different in the sense that 02 is still the one running around destroying everything crazily. I mean, they're super good. I mean, it was mentioned that it was like having multiple 02s on their team, but it still feels like 02 is stronger and different than they are, and she has horns and they do not. So I don't know what the differences would be. Maybe, yeah, I have no idea. Oh, okay, well, we also had the other team that they self-destructed, which was I wasn't too saddened by it, but it was kind of sad to see them go that way, just because it's like, I mean, it just literally seemed to have like no impact, and we all know that Papa and his people are pretty stupid and pretty terrible people, so that wasn't really a great honor to die for or anything like that. They didn't play it up quite as big as I thought they would initially. I mean, we only saw the one guy. We didn't really see his teammates too much. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's okay because I mean the episode still was phenomenal. I mean, really. And then we had the reveal that it looked like inside the core of one of the Klaxosaurs that there was a person. Or at least looked like a person, and that kind of goes with my theory about the Klaxosaurs coming from people. So I'm gonna hold true to that theory. I'm gonna lay my cards down. I think each of the Klaxosaurs has the people inside the core. For some reason, I never like connected that idea. Like I never thought like, oh, like, maybe it's them that's in the core. But that's like the next logical conclusion from the fact that these things came from people. Now, I still have no idea how they would come from people. We have this giant hand coming out at the end, and I have no idea what that is. I mean, it seemed to be intelligent, though, because it destroyed the Klaxosaur while purposely avoiding the structures, the people, or I can't remember exactly what it was, but it seemed like it knew what it was doing. So I feel like this thing's intelligent. And Papa said something about now humanity can be liberated, which liberated is another term for being free or set free. So it's an interesting choice of words. I mean, on one hand, if you're liberated from the Klaxosaur because you're able to get rid of them, that would be a really good thing. But something tells me that this isn't this isn't that noble of a cause. I mean, maybe it will help get rid of the Klaxosaur, but maybe it will also free them in other ways, maybe ways people don't want to be free. Maybe it will destroy their bodies so their souls can reach some sort of utopia or something. I know this is a very far-fetched idea, but I'm going out here because I mean we're watching anime, and this anime seems to be really well written and have crazy ideas of its own. So I'm just projecting some thoughts here. But what if Papa and the people, their ideas is maybe they're trying to replicate sort of what that man is going through, where the man with the old woman who's married to her, but he doesn't ever talk to her or see her because he's stuck in that chamber and he's experiencing this happiness. What if they're trying to take that to the next level? What if now they are, instead of like maybe these people are, maybe they see the flaws in being hooked up to a machine and just being fed these lies to you? What if you could actually experience this happiness and be there in your own physical form, as opposed, or be there in some sort of form that was better than just being there in your brain? Like, what if you could actually be like a matter that is like a spirit that could enjoy this utopic experience, you know, sort of the idea of going to heaven? What if you could almost like force people into heaven, I guess? Like, what if you could like I don't know, like I'm just thinking about which ways Papa and these people could or would want people to be liberated, because I feel like it can't just be like, hey, we got this awesome thing to help us fight the Klaxosaur and everything's good. It definitely can't be that, right? You know, it can't be that. So thinking of it in a cynical context, I'm just thinking like, okay, well, I mean, even if what I'm saying is correct, I'm not sure how a gigantic hand would play into that. I mean, I do think that we could possibly see like a new enemy type. Maybe, you know, it's like, oh, there was the Klaxosaur, but now here's the Handosaurs. Ooh, I totally joking about the Handosaurs. I think that their names would be completely different, and it's probably not just a hand. There's probably different variation. I'm either thinking it's a new enemy type with different variations, or it's going to be like one gigantic entity or being, maybe one godlike being of some sort that will look strange and weird and act weird. And maybe this will be something where Papa and his like council of people are saying, hey, this is what's best for humanity, this is what's best for us and everyone else and all this stuff, and we're choosing this. And that's when Hito and Zero Two have to come in and say, like, hey, even though that we're humans and we're flawed and we cry and we get angry about stupid stuff and we hurt each other's feelings, it's good to experience life the way it currently is, with the ups and the downs, with the good and the bad. And they're going to fight against that notion. That's my idea, at least, but I have seen that before in other anime, so maybe this anime will surprise me. Also, I'm thinking if there is going to be a big twist of some sort that people really hate in this show, I feel like the perfect episode for that to be in is the next episode, because this one definitely felt like an ending of this chapter, and it felt like the start of a new chapter. So if there's something that people really don't like, I assume it's going to happen in the next 1 or 2 episodes. Whew, so we'll see, but I mean, I'm loving this series so far, and I'm really enjoying it, and yeah, I cannot wait to see more. So hopefully that covers everything with this episode, and as always, stay awesome. Bye. Welcome, what is up? This is episode number 14 of Hello Darling, and we are discussing episode 16, Days of Our Lives. And we are not going to be talking to you about the soap opera that's been going on forever. We're going to talk to you about this amazing episode, because all the episodes have been amazing so far, and I hope it continues this amazing streak, because man, I am loving this show. Though I do have to say, I still have this nervous pit in my stomach about what could happen, especially when they talk about being together forever. They're really setting up my hopes for them to have a happy ending, and maybe, just maybe, they will. It's very hard to tell. I know at the beginning I thought that they would all be slaughtered, and then I was like, okay, they won't all be slaughtered, but they'll all die one by one, and that kind of thing, or whatever. But man, yeah, it's really hard to say. We also got a new opening this episode, which was super cool. I really dug it. It changed the red out with the blue. It actually reminded me of Mirai Nikki or the Future Diary that way. And this opening also had sort of like a weird, like, aquatic feel to it. I don't necessarily think water will play like a big picture or anything in the show. I mean, this episode, they were dealing with trying to, make sure that they had enough water. But yeah, I think it just had like a really cool look to it that to me felt kind of aquatic, and it could relate to being isolated. Like in the sea, it can feel lonely and strange, and it's also a beautiful thing, which I think describes the show pretty well. Strange and beautiful. We also saw that there was an aerial base. I believe it's aerial base, and it's called Cosmos. And it's where Papa and all his crew is, having a good time up above, away from everything, choosing to set things up however they wish. I don't know why I never really thought about them being up, up in the sky or up in space. I think they're in the sky, but if they're called Cosmos, maybe they're in space. I didn't quite catch it. Either way, I didn't really think about that, but that makes a whole lot of sense. I also love seeing Happy 02. She's super awesome, and I'm not sure where it's going to go, because we've seen her reach a pretty low point. A few episodes ago, she turned quote-unquote crazy. She hurt the team, though I will say I was very surprised that she held back for as long as she did. She's shown a lot of self-restraint, which I think is really cool, because in other anime and other shows where there's a character that's dealing with feeling like a monster, they usually reach this point, like, as soon as they feel like a monster, they start hurting everyone. So it was really cool to see 02 hold herself back as if she did care, about these people, or at least care about how she interacted with them and stuff, and she didn't want to be that monster. It was cool to see that there. So I'm not sure if we're going to revisit that same idea of like, oh, now it's Happy 02, and look how much you love her, and then boom, she's super murderous and horrible or something. it's kind of, I kind of don't feel like they'll retread the same ground. Like, I think that they'll definitely give her reasons to be upset. They'll give her challenges. They will put obstacles in the way. They're going to have tension and drama, but I don't think we're going to see it the same way that we just saw it previously. But that's just my thoughts. Also, we saw that Mitsuru has a haircut, which I noticed from the opening. It's really cool. He even had a little moment with Kokoro, which is interesting. You know, I feel bad for the other guy, which this episode sort of had a theme with him, and he wasn't able to keep food down, and he was throwing it up. I'm not sure if he's actually sick or if he is dealing with a really bad mental problem of maybe he's thinking that he lost Kokoro due to his weight. And if he loses this weight, maybe she would find him more attractive. Now, I don't think that's the case for Kokoro. I don't think that's how it actually is, but I could definitely see how he would be reasoning that, because he's not the kind of guy that everyone is like, oh, you're the coolest, you're the best, you know, thanks for this and that. It's like, you're fat, you keep eating a lot. And he lost the thing that was closest to him. So I could definitely imagine how terrible that would be to be in that situation, and maybe that's what's causing him not to be able to eat. Then again, it was mentioned that they were infected before, and we saw that Miku had, I believe it was pink in her hair, and she kind of swatted 02 away, and that's very interesting. It's, you know, what does that mean? And Kokoro already has pink hair, so it's not like there's any problems with her. But why does Miku just have this one strand? It seems like out of place. Seems like maybe like a new development that the show wants you to see. So maybe they're all slightly transforming into Klaxosaur kind of people like 02. I don't think that's the case. That's just a kind of spitball idea, I guess. But I'm excited that they let 02 in, especially after she beat them up and was so harsh with them and stuff. I'm glad that, you know, people can see, or at least these people can see that, you know, they have a lot of empathy. They can understand others really well. They can see people's perspectives and see, you know, how messed up things can be, or, you know, how people feel and stuff like that. And I think that really plays a role into them allowing 02 to come back into their group. I was so worried that 02 was going to kill them by this point, but that has not happened, so that's really good. It also seems like 02 cares more for the team as a whole, which is nice. Like, she, of course, cares the most about her darling, but she doesn't seem as so, like, self-centered with just her personal quest to be with him. Like, she just seems to be a lot better as a person now, which is awesome. And, oh, yeah. And the final thing that I'd like to note is at the end, not only did we get a new ending, but we also saw that there was this like 02 look-alike, which gave me this crazy idea immediately as what if the 02 that we currently have is a clone of the original girl that Hito had met. So there's this big dilemma, because the original girl that he had those fun memories with is now evil or bad in some way, and he would kind of want to be with her because that was the girl that he originally had that connection with. But this new 02 is a clone of her with her same memories and stuff, so it feels like her, but she's going to feel betrayed if Hito tries to leave her for the original, and that would make her feel imperfect and messed up and all this stuff. Crazy theory, but I think that's possible. At the very least, I think that person is 01. I think that there's a reason why 02 is 02, is because there has to be a 01, and I mentioned that at the beginning. So, pretty happy about that prediction. So we'll see where this one goes. So, yeah, I think that's all I got for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed listening to another episode of Hello Darling. Be sure to leave some comments. Tell me what you thought of the comments I made and all that good stuff. As always, stay awesome. Bye. Welcome to the next episode of Hello Darling, where we are discussing episode 17, Eden. Now, this episode was super interesting. Oh man, I don't even know where to begin. Okay, so one thing I noticed about the opening this time, since we've gotten a new opening since the last episode, is Hero goes to grab 02 and she vanishes. Now, that could just be an artistic interpretation of feelings or, something like that, but it may be a clue that by the end of the series, she's going to disappear, or she's going to not be with him anymore. It wouldn't be unheard of to have an anime have an overall like the way I would expect this ending to be bittersweet. I'm expecting this ending to end where the good guys win, but not without their losses, and 02 just might be that loss. It would also make sense why people would be upset, because I'm sure we don't want to lose 02, but we'll have to see on that. Someone mentioned the quote of being hopelessly imperfect, and I thought that was interesting, so I wrote that down, but I can't remember who said it. And also, at the beginning of this episode, we have, I guess her name's Her name's Ikano. Yeah, Ikano. I thought we were going to get more from her this episode. I see that there's hints of... I've seen it from the very beginning that there's hints of her... she's mentioning that she has things that she can't talk about and this kind of stuff, and it's probably the fact that she has feelings for, Ichigo or something, and since everything is about boy and girl pairings, she probably feels very off about that, since she feels like she's not quite normal as far as that goes. I also noticed in the ending shot, there appears to be an image that relates to that. So we'll see. I'm sure we're going to get more from that, but I'm not sure how much more or what kind of form that will take, but we shall see. We also got to see what I noted as baby time, which actually was before the ending. It was actually just when Kokono was just, touching Mitsuru and stuff, and was like, I want to make a baby and stuff. I was like, oh, dang, that's crazy. And it was even weird that they were told later that they were being watched, but hopefully they were not being watched towards the end of the episode where they were in that room. So that's very interesting. If you would have asked me at the beginning, if you would have said, like, hey, 2 characters are going to do it, which 2 do you think would be the first to do it? I would not have assumed those 2 for various reasons. But, it's to me, it's very interesting seeing these, it's very interesting seeing this topic being handled. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be the shocking, surprising thing that turns so many people away from the show, but personally, I think it's kind of awesome because in the way that like in this dystopian future, there's so much horrible things that a corrupt government could do, and taking away your humanity, taking away your identity, taking away how you should feel, who you should be, all these questions you have with no answers. That's all that's all a lot of terrible stuff. And I mean, seeing how it's affecting these characters to me is riveting. It's very interesting, and I'm personally enjoying it. And I haven't mentioned this before, but I should have. But I really don't like the nines. I never liked the nines since they were introduced. That's why I didn't talk about them when they were introduced. I could care less. I feel like depending on their kind of arc and more of their backstory, they may be just my overall least favorite thing about the show. Like, I know it might be easy to say, we're like, oh, well, they're, if they're the bad people, it's always easy to hate the bad people. But there's some that's different. Like I can see... I think the Klaxosaurs are awesome. They're bad, or at least they appear to be bad because they're they're trying to kill the characters that we love. But I think that they make for really good villains. And I also think that Papa and his people could make for some good villains. I'm not sure if the Nines are going to be villains that I enjoy. I just don't like that weird, flirtatious, but not funny kind of villain. I mean, I'm okay with like a flamboyant villain like the Joker or Handsome Jack, where he has a big personality and he's intersecting himself everywhere. But this guy's like not funny, so I think that's the big difference. And I can't remember the guy's name at all. I just keep wanting to call him Michaela. But yeah, we'll see about that though. Of course, we had Nana freaking out and something about mentioning like puberty is relapsing or something. I guess they have to take some sort of therapy or some sort of medication or something to skip their puberty stage or something. And then if they relapse, then they start experiencing more emotions and then they can't do their task as well or something. So we'll see what happens with that. We also notice that Klaxosaur has technology. They have a queen, or a princess as they called her, and she actually doesn't look as much like Zero Two as I had thought. I don't think that she is... I mean, she might be related to Zero Two since Zero Two is part Klaxosaur, but I don't think she... I'm kind of retracting my clone theory, my clone prediction I gave. But this is very much shaping up a lot like Gears of War. As far as like, I'm not sure if you played Gears of War, but in the Gears of War series, they have a Locust Queen, and she looks very human-ish, whereas all the other Locusts do not. Now, in that series, as far as I know, they don't really explain a lot of the details as far as that goes. I still don't know why that was the case. And I'm really hoping that in this series they show more of the Klaxosaurs, why there's a Klaxosaur princess and what's going on there. I also thought it was a bit funny that the people come in and they're like, we're here to have you surrender because obviously there's no way you could beat us and we're going to win. And then they get slaughtered. Like, like really? Like, you thought that this would be a good idea? Like, I don't think you could pay me enough money to go down in some sort of Klaxosaur hole where there's tons of crazy Klaxosaurs and this princess chick, and to tell her that she needs to surrender to me. Like, there is no way. That was stupid, but you know, it was amusing to watch, and I think it was fine to be in the show. Yeah, I think that's probably about it for this episode. It was named Eden, which might be a reference to the Klaxosaur princess in her area. We might even find out that the Klaxosaurs are good in some way. Maybe she's trying to save humanity. Maybe, yeah, that'd be an interesting twist, right? You know, where they, let's see, that's interesting. Okay, so the Klaxosaurs and her could be trying to revolt against Papa and the people, which I kind of already thought was a thing. I just didn't know if it would be more of a three-way fight between those two and our main protagonist, or if it would be even them joining forces with the Klaxosaur, which I haven't talked about before or really thought about. But seeing this episode made me think that might be possible, but I'm not 100% on that one, of course. I definitely think Papa and his people are evil. I think the Nines are going to be butts. They're going to get in the way. I think the Klaxosaur definitely have a lot more to them than what we know. I think the Klaxosaur princess has a lot more to her than what we know. And I think our main heroes and protagonists have a lot more to discover. And I think they're going to live on for at least a while longer. I mean, we're already kind of nearing the end of the show, but I think if any of them die at this point, I think it's going to be the last episode or the episode before the last. Like, it's going to be, and it might only be a few of them. I'm actually thinking that they're safer as the story is developing, which maybe the writers just want me to think that and then take that away from me. I'm not sure, but I think that they'll be okay for the most part. But of course, they're going to have some more tears, some more pain, and all that stuff. And of course, we also realize that Hero is not an artist. But, you know, Zero Two still likes it and thinks it's perfect, which is great. So, yeah, overall, I love this episode. It's continuing the amazing streak, and I'm going to go ahead and play the next episode. So be sure to leave a comment, share this with your friends who also like Darling in the Franxx. And, yeah, thank you. Stay awesome. No! Mitsuru and Kokoro, they lost their memories just as they were getting married. I don't know if you count that as being officially married or not, because they were like like just a second away, and their heart was definitely in that right place. So go ahead and drop a comment below. Let me know if you think that at this point in this series, is Mitsuru and Kokoro married, or are they not because they didn't seal it with a kiss? Let me know what you think. Anyways, welcome to Hello Darling. We are talking about episode 18, of course, When the Sakura Blooms, which was a fantastically beautiful episode and fantastically tragic. I will have to admit that I did see the twist coming as far as this goes. I saw it, I was like, there's no way that this is... I thought, though, that we would get to see the end of the wedding. Like, I thought the wedding, would go through, and that would be pretty and amazing, and then they would get captured, taken, and then lose their memory. But it happened during the wedding, which, I'm not sure if I preferred that or not, just from a story perspective, but it was... the episode was great. I think what's so great about this series is it speaks so much about humanity, about, what love is, about the questions we ask ourselves, about the questions that we have with our own feelings, and what makes us feel incomplete and complete. It just really tackles some very serious subjects in a very interesting way. Given the unique scenario that these characters are in, it really allows them to dive deep into these questions in an interesting way. We also got to see that... I already forgot her name, but the girl with the glasses, she confessed to Ichigo, and Ichigo does not seem to have feelings back for her, because, as we know, Ichigo has feelings for Hiro, but, people can develop feelings for multiple people, especially over time and things like that, so we'll have to see if that goes anywhere, but it's at least good that she got to vent that, remove that burden off of her chest. I also feel like, especially up until this point, that character had been the weakest character among all of them. I think in a previous episode I mentioned that Miku and Futanashi were the two weak characters in my mind, but I didn't mention her because I honestly just forgot about her. So she definitely, in my mind, needed something to happen, and I felt like at least in this episode we got to see more from her perspective, which I had hinted at before or theorized on before. So it was nice to see that, and I'm sure it's tough. I can't personally relate in the same exact way as her as far as that goes, but it has to be tough to be told that you're wrong, or to feel like you're messed up in some way, to feel like you're not right. I think people outside of having gay emotions can relate to that, in the sense of anything that you feel attracted to that you feel like is deemed weird, or if you have a weird fetish or something, or maybe you like someone for all the wrong reasons or something, like maybe you're attracted to people that hurt you. There's a lot of different things that you could be attracted to that you could feel like is wrong, and in some cases that may be wrong, and I'm not trying to say in her case it is wrong. I'm just trying to say that the feelings that she has isn't mutually exclusive. I feel like you can be someone with a different perspective and yet still have empathy towards her, because you can gather those feelings from something else. But anyways, I digress. The council with Papa mentioned something about ape and humanity, or apes and humanity, about them joining together or something. I have no idea what that's talking about, unless they're trying to say that Klaxosaurs came from monkeys. Maybe it's an evolution thing. I don't really have a theory with that beyond that point. I don't know if they just call certain things apes or ape, or maybe I'm just missing something with that, but I'm not sure. And, this episode had a lot to do with the Sakuras and them blooming, and I think that was awesome because it symbolized the love. They went to bed together, they wake up, they see the Sakuras have bloomed, everything's pretty and amazing and all that stuff. And Goro had a quote, "We all have issues," I believe that's what he said, and that's just, it's cool that this show is speaking to that, because we do. As humans, we're flawed, and we all have our own struggles, and it helps put things into perspective, watching the show, that I have my own personal struggles that I'm dealing with, and you have your own personal struggles that you're dealing with, and sometimes it can feel isolating. It can feel like my struggles are so horrible. Those people, yeah, they may have struggles, but like mine are so bad. Like I'm living with this and they're horrible. And we have the tendency to think that our own struggles are worse than other people's, but really like just life itself is a struggle, and we're all trying our best to just make it through and to be happy. And then unfortunately for these characters, as they find that happiness, it gets ripped out from them. And I'm sure many of you could relate to that as well, where I mean, maybe not. Maybe this is just me speaking from my own experience, but it can be a struggle to stay happy sometimes. Like there's times in life where I have a really fun moment or a really happy moment, and maybe I'm out with some friends just like they are, and I'm enjoying the day, and then I get a phone call from someone and they tell me something horrible, and it just ruins the moment, ruins the day, and my life gets changed because of that. And yeah, I just, everyone has their struggles, and I had no idea that when I went into making this podcast that it would be something so philosophical that I'd be talking about, and it's also really hard to talk philosophically, quote unquote, off the top of my head. There's a lot of deep thoughts and there's a lot of deep concepts that go into that, and yeah, it's pretty crazy to talk about, but hey, if you're listening, especially this far into the podcast, I really appreciate it. You must really enjoy hearing people random rambling. There we go. That works. And let's see. We also have a quote from Hero at the end. He says, "If that is our destiny, we can't let it rule us anymore. We're at the end of our rope." I like that idea. I mean, I think that they're getting pushed to the end of their ropes, and they're tired of not having answers to all their questions. They're tired of not being happy. And I think we're going to see an awesome fight by the end of this, where all the heroes have to join together and take out Papa and all of his people or whatever. It seems like there's so much more to go. I love that we saw Zero Two try to protect her friends. We saw that she tried to fight off the Nines, who seemed to be able to fight on par with her, or at least somewhere around her fighting level, but since she was outnumbered, she was unable to take them on. We also saw that the guy with the shaved head used to be a pilot, and the woman used to be a pilot or pistol, and something happened with them, and he no longer has emotion, which explains why his character has always been kind of boring, and I can't remember his character's name. But, it makes sense for the show, and it's interesting to see more of their backstory. He kind of reminds me a bit of, he kind of looks like Android 17 from Dragon Ball Z, meets like Trunks from Dragon Ball Z, and he has the same English voice actor as Trunks, so that's interesting. Anyways, I'm still loving the series. I'm starting to think that maybe the big twist was that they mentioned puberty or something, like, oh no, the plot mentioned puberty, we can't handle it anymore, this is so stupid. I don't know if that's the case. I'm actually going to be kind of mad if that's the case, because I spent a lot of time worrying about this, and I mean, like, I legit felt sick to my stomach, and I still feel a little worried, but it's almost to the point where it's like, I can't tell if it's making my experience better or worse, that I keep expecting something to just horrifically, change my mind about this series to where I hate it. But it kind of, bothers me that, I mean, I don't want to, it just feels like I was led to believe that based on, I've heard reactions from probably 6 people. 2 people said they absolutely loved the show. And then, or maybe 3 or 4 people said that, and then 3 or 4 people told me that there's a point in the show that something so stupid happens that they hate, they just can't stand in this series, and it completely turned them off from the show, and they just had to quit watching it. And I can't imagine, even if I saw, no matter what I see at this point, I feel like I just have to finish the series. I'm already so far into the series, I'm not going to drop it a few episodes before the end. And the only thing I can think about up to this point is just the fact that, it is, possibly a little weird that they mention puberty and whatever, but there's something that's super, just beautiful to me to have this, these people try to discover what marriage is about, and this connection between people, and what love is. And it's such an interesting concept because I've never seen it done like this in a show. I'm not even sure if I've ever seen it done in a show, but if I have, it definitely wasn't done like this. And it's just, I'm not sure if there's anything more beautiful in life than finding that special someone and being with them and just having yourself feel complete and just having this happiness and the fact that these kids are trying to achieve this and they're so close to it and they're having to discover this on their own, but they're having the forces of life take this away from them. I think is a truly compelling thing to see. But we'll have to see. I'm gonna have to wait until the next episode, I guess, to see what happens from here. But man, I'm loving it. It's amazing. I do hope that Mitsuru and Kokoro get their memories back. I mean, Hiro was able to. It might have been because of the Klaxosaur blood, but I have hope for them because they have the rings. And Kokoro at the end was staring at the sakura tree, so I think that she can tell that something is missing within her. And to me, that just always resonates so deeply because, like, I just inherently have like a sense of like longing. I mean, like, there's just parts of me that have just been broken in my past, and there's moments that I cherish and miss, and it just kind of reminds me of that same feeling of like this nostalgia or just wanting to be out of my current state where things may be horrible, but there were times in my life that felt so peaceful and so whole, and I think that these characters are going to be longing for that, and I hope by the end that they get there on their journey. Wow, okay, some deep stuff, but thanks for hanging in there with me. As always, leave a comment, let me know that you're listening to this episode. It means the world to me. I super duper appreciate it. Until next time, stay awesome. What is up? Welcome to Hello Darling. We are going to be discussing episode 19, Inhumanity, today, which was a very interesting episode. This one dives super deep into the lore of the entire world, the Klaxosaurs, ape, and all that stuff. So, wow. Okay, so interestingly enough, I actually guessed a lot of things correctly, though I must admit I threw a lot of things at the wall. Like, I guessed a whole lot of things. I said maybe the Klaxosaurs came from, space and things like that. But I was correct that Klaxosaurs were underground. I think I mentioned that they may have had a queen, or maybe I didn't mention that, but I related that to Locust from Gears of War, which in Gears of War they have something which is known as emulsion, which is a lot like magma that they use as this amazing energy source. And I theorized that that would probably be the case here, and it turns out it was. And I theorized, like, what could they be seeking from this amazing energy source? And I said immortality, which was also the case. So that's pretty cool. We have Dr. Franxx, whose name is Werner Frank, and I said that really weird. Werner Frank. And apparently all this stuff started going down around 2025. So not too much further in our future. We'll see if some scientists want to start using magma as a supreme energy source. This episode went into... Wow, okay, so Klaxosaurs, their names are... Basically, they're named after screaming reptiles, which is that's what the name means. They're not named after screaming reptiles, per se. That's just what the name translates to. And they're both organic and inorganic, which is pretty fascinating. I'm not sure if there's a specific reason for that, but pretty interesting. And they have the chromosome seen in females. So we have a princess in charge of it all, and then females have something to do with these Klaxosaurs. Maybe they are birthed from... Maybe whenever... Okay, new theory, guys. Are you prepared? When the adults give up their reproductive organs, it makes a Klaxosaur. So all these adults sitting in the city, forgetting about everything, looking real pretty, doing whatever they want to do, living their happy life of immortality, they have given birth to all these Klaxosaur. Now that's it's a little bit of a crazy theory because the Klaxosaurs seem to start popping up, I think, a year after they started doing this process. So I'm not sure if that's too soon or not for that. I mean, I'm still wondering about exactly where the Klaxosaurs came from. Like, we know that they came from underground, but we're not exactly sure why or what made them or where this girl came from. But, however, we did realize that 02 is made from her. So I think I theorized that in a previous episode recently. But either way, that's pretty cool. So that makes sense why, like how they're connected and how 02 is connected to the Klaxosaur and how she has that blood in her and all that stuff. We also had some background on when the Franxx were made and how excruciatingly painful it was for those to get made. I do find it interesting that that at some point they had to be like, okay, we lost 100 people. Let's get a boy and a girl in this thing, and let's make sure the girl's bent over because we think that will increase our powers, or something. I think they explained it as, they found that it alleviated the couples in a certain way or something like that. Which I mean, let's be honest. I mean, like having sex has like good benefits and stuff. I mean, it's proven, it's scientifically proven that it has benefits. So maybe they're playing into that whole aspect, sorta. Though I don't know. It's weird though that they don't want the kids to. It's weird that if that's the case, it's weird that they don't want kids to be more romantic, to be more together, and all this sort of thing. I'd be interested to see why that is such an issue, because it seems like if they just let the kids, get together, do whatever they want together, or maybe not do whatever they want, but if they let the kids be in love and, act that way, it seems like they'd be able to pilot things better, and it seems like they'd be a lot more loyal to Papa, who we now know is Ape, which, we may have known that before, but maybe that was just something I didn't quite catch. But Ape is basically the organization that Papa and all those weird-looking people with the mask and the white cloaks and stuff are a part of. So I wonder why that's the thing. Maybe they don't want them falling in love and stuff just because they could break up and then starts a lot of drama, and there's, they might start getting emotional. Like there might be a guy that wants to start hitting on somebody, like literally like physically beating someone or something. Like we have really bad relationships in today's world. So maybe they're just trying to think of that, saying, hey, if we allow them too much freedom, then they will possibly do these things, which will be really bad on our end. But, it seems to me that things are working a lot better for them anyways with Squad 13. At least up until this point. Like, if they had just let every single squad of kids that they had act better, not act better, but give them more freedom to fall in love and everything, then it just seems like it would have worked better for them. Let me know what you think in the comments below about that. Obviously they made the dumb choice because these kids are not not liking Ape at the moment, and it seems like, as Warner Franxx had mentioned, like they're going to rebel against Ape. They haven't fully come to that decision as of yet, but I feel like that's where they'll reach by the end of the episode. So, let me know in the comments, what do you think the reasoning for this is? Like, why would Ape not want them to fall in love? What's the big drawback to that happening? And yeah, some crazy stuff. This whole episode was about inhumanity. It was about what it means to be human, which is frequently talked about in this series. And it was interesting that Dr. Franxx didn't want to go through the immortality process. He said that he didn't like his body to be modified, but he'd be okay with like robot parts. And also when the people have to give up their reproductive organs to become immortal, I kind of wonder how that process is, because it seemed like they were becoming immortal, and then something like they gave up their reproductive organs. Does that mean that it just stopped working for them? That's how I'm assuming that plays out. We even have, real life medicine today that hinders reproductive organs to where they don't work anymore and they become dysfunctional and stuff like that. I'm just not sure if I've ever heard of it being used in the way like, yeah, they are without their reproductive organs. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff. I am still, of course, loving this show. I've been just absolutely enjoying it. So thanks for thanks for riding along with me on this. And until next time, stay awesome. Welcome to the next episode where we are talking about episode 20, A New World. This is Hello Darling, where we talk about nothing except for Darling in the Franxx. I'm so happy to have you here. This episode was crazy. I actually had to watch it a second time, at least sort of skimming through, just to try to make sure I got all the details I needed to talk about for this episode, because this episode revealed a whole hecky ton of a lottie. So starting off, we notice that Nana is replaced by some new Nana, as we'll call her, which, that makes sense. The other one was relapsing or something, but, that was interesting. I also noticed that the title for this episode, A New World, it shares the same name of the finale of Death Note. Just a little fun fact for you there. We also noticed that Kokoro and Mitsuru were having these issues where they, of course they lost their memories, or it wasn't that they lost their memories, it was that their memories were altered and then they had new memories implanted. And now when they speak each other's real names, or I guess, I don't know if you call it their real names, but the names that they usually would call each other, their brains hurt and it's super painful for them. And so we had to witness them go through that, which was pretty sad. But it's that struggle of love, trying to find its way, and it's fated to for them to be together, but they're having to fight against this terrible thing. So that's interesting. I also love the scene with Miku where she grabbed Kokoro and she said, "We must survive. You taught us that. We must make our mark on the world." And that was just a really good emotional scene. Seeing Kokoro relapse back to what she had believed before because of her memories being altered, but how stunned everyone was to hear that. And that's where they used to be, but now they've learned so much and they've grown as people and as characters that they just have a better grasp on reality, and I thought that was really cool. Now, as it was revealed a while ago, the group of Papa and those people are called APE. I do wonder why they're called APE. I wonder if that's an acronym and it stands for something. I have no guesses for what it stands for, but I do feel like there has to be a reason why it's called ape. Maybe it has something to do with evolution, and they believe that they are evolving to the next form of life, which is some sort of eternal immortality, heaven-ish thing. Which, by the end of the episode, we get something that's close to that, which fits my prediction about them trying to go for immortality. So that was pretty interesting. I also loved how 02 stood up for the humans, or stood up for the humans. She stood up for the rest of the team against the Nines, and that was an amazing scene because I can't stand the Nines. I think they're stupid, and I like it when 02 and the team gets along, so that's awesome. I also randomly noticed that the gloves that the pilots have, such as Mitsuru's, they looks a lot like Ryoko's design from Kill la Kill. So just another little fun fact there. We also had a really great moment with Hiro and 02, perhaps actually my favorite moment in the entire episode. They say something like, "If we're together, we can defy any fate." And I think 02 is the one that says, "What if we're torn apart?" And then Hiro says, "Then I'll come get you." And then she's like, "I'll come get you too." And then they're like, "You promise?" And they're like, "I promise." And it's honestly it might be it's one of my favorite I don't know, quote unquote cute scenes in an anime. I also love that the aspect ratio changed for it, and it was just a really good moment. It's I love that moment. I also feel like I was correct about the Klaxosaurs being intelligent, because earlier on when they were attacking in waves early in the series, I was like, just primal beasts do not attack in waves. They don't attack with this sort of distinction. It seems like they have some sort of intelligence behind them. Either they're being commanded or inside them, so that's cool. I was also right about 02 being some sort of offspring of 01, and that there being a 01 and 01 playing a major role in this anime. So that's pretty crazy. I did not, however, guess that they were clacks of sapiens. So I never considered that there was like these, I don't know, these like beast humans. I don't know what you'd call them, like monster kind of humans. So that's interesting. And this happened before, but I don't think I talked about it. But Hero has the horns. I don't really have much to note, but I mean, hey, it's cool. You get horns, bro. I don't think he minds at all, so it's okay. Now, I do have another theory based on this episode. I actually think that 01 might have been the girl that Hero was playing with, but 02 has those memories since she is genetically altered from 01. That could be a devastating plot twist to both Hero and especially 02. I do know that Hero won't mind, though. Like, Hero will still love 02, and he'll probably tell her that the moments that they've shared in this past, few months or year or however long it's been, is more than enough to be in love with her and her only. So I'm sure it won't be an issue in the end, but that will be interesting to see. Also, we see that 02 is bleeding out pretty badly, but I know that she'll be okay. She's not going to let a little punch and throw or whatever happen to her stop her. She might be bleeding all over the walls, but she's got a lot of fight in her, and as I predicted earlier, I do not see her dying. Unless it's the last episode, then I see that maybe she will be the one to die and everyone else lives. I hope that's not the case. And actually, I want to talk on something. I've been nervous this entire time pretty much because I heard like this awful thing has to happen and it makes everyone hate the show and all this stuff. And anytime I've ever heard that before, it always been because they hated when like a group of characters would die. So it just automatically made me feel like this show was setting me up to have a bunch of characters die, have the whole team die, that kind of thing. And that was part of my predictions, and those were my worst predictions, at least so far, unless they all just like die the next episode or something. But I feel like those are like my most off-base predictions because of what I was told, and so it made me kind of try to like see something that wasn't quite there. I'm actually going. I mean, It's still possible that these characters could all die, but I'm going to just go ahead and take the guess right here now that by the end of the series, we're going to see that most, if not all, of the main Squad 13 is going to be alive. I feel like we might have a moment where a few of them dies or something, but I'm actually going to guess that the majority of them are going to live. And if I had to push it even further, I would say that everyone will live except 02. I don't think it would make sense just to kill one of the other characters off. Like if they just killed Miku or Konako or Mitsuru, I don't think that would be enough. I think we might feel sad that 02's gone and Hero's going to be destroyed by it, but we're going to have the love through Kokoro and Mitsuru, and we're going to still have Goro and the other characters. So I think that'd be one way for them to make it not like just totally happy, but still have like a really big loss that hurts people. But at the same time, 02 is so awesome, and that's, I mean, I don't know if you want to lose 02 at the end. That's a big play for the writer, but we'll have to see. I'm just saying I think that's going to be more likely than having the whole crew die as I predicted early on, and I was worried about for a while. At first I wasn't that worried because I was set up for it where I was like, okay, I'm not going to like these characters, or I'm not going to try to get too attached to these characters because I don't want to just see them slaughtered and be hurt like everyone else. But, I'm very much attached to these characters, and I'm still open to them dying. I don't want them to die. I don't want to see them die. It'd make me very sad. I just want to see a good story, and the writers have been so on point this whole series that I trust that if they write them to die or not die, it will be for the right choice. I personally don't think, like, just from what I can tell, I don't think that they need to die or have to die for this writing to be good and for the story to end in a way that the entire story as a whole is made really good. But we'll have to see on that. I also knew that magma had to be the culprit. I mean, I feel like that was obvious because the Clack stores was always coming towards the most concentrated area of magma. and it just seemed to be like the thing where like society changed because of the magma, and then Klaxosaurs started attacking. So like in life, if you notice that something starts happening that's different, that's seemingly out of nowhere, you might want to consider if you've changed something in your life or something different has happened to your life that would cause that sort of reaction. It doesn't necessarily mean the two are connected, but especially if you're writing a story, it would just be a waste of material to have these different elements and then not connect them, unless you're trying to do like a red herring or something. And then I do wonder, we learned that the Franxx were made of Klaxosaurs, which I didn't quite guess. I did guess that the Franxx were maybe made of people in some way, like they're kind of a hibernation of people or something. Like I knew the Franxx probably had like some sort of, they had a mysterious element to them because they looked weird. So I had that correct, but I didn't have that. I'm still confused on this, honestly. Like they said that they're made of, like they're part of Klaxosaurs, but I can't tell if like did they just look like that, and then Dr. Franxx just re-engineered their insides, or did he just take Klaxosaur like flesh, like parts, and made the Franxx out of that? I assume that's what it is, but I was a little confused too because we learned that the Klaxosaurs are like weapons, and they have the male piloting the weapons inside the core. So does that mean that like the living creature itself, was that artificially made by the Klaxosaurs or the Klaxosapiens to be like a weapon, as they said? Or did the Klaxosapiens become weapons? Which I think is what he meant. Like they become these monsters instead of them making the monsters. It's a little tough for me to discern, but I think that's what they were talking about. We also got to see Vern, which is some sort of alien species, and I wonder how connected the guys at Ape are to them. Obviously, some of the people at Ape had no idea what was going on, but there are at least two people that do. Maybe those people are aliens. Maybe the aliens are just these, like, quote unquote ascended human forms that took this eternal new life, this new type of incarnation of themselves. I could see that being very possible. I did say that I thought there'd be like a three-way battle, so we're kind of seeing that, which is interesting. And yeah, one of the last notes is we'll take you to eternal paradise, which I kind of called that one too. I said that I thought that would be the end mission for these stupid Ape people, trying to take people to eternal paradise. Just let people live their lives, let them be happy, don't make choices for other people. I mean, if someone wants to sign up for some sort of program and, quote unquote, become eternal or whatever, I guess that's their own personal freedom, but don't sit here and destroy the world and, act like you're above everyone else, which is what this guy is doing, or this collective group of people are doing. So I'm going to leave it off on that note. I really enjoyed the episode. I really am enjoying the series, and I'm excited to see this through. Take care, you guys. As always, stay awesome. Welcome to Hello, Darling. We are going to be discussing episode 21, For You, My Love. And, wow, this episode was crazy. I mean, this is like the best. If you would have told me that this show was like the best romance story since like Deadpool, I would not have believed you. Oh man, all the feels, even the moment when the princess's Klaxosaur thing took 02 and then like sacrificed itself to get her to where she needed to be. Like even that, like that made me tear up a little bit, which is weird because I didn't know I had any feelings for that creature. But that was crazy. I barely even wrote anything down. It's so hard for me to write things down for these episodes because like I am so invested and I'm so into it. It's so captivating. It blows my mind. Jerome mentioned, he was like, wasn't what they were trying to do in the war, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it was, they were trying to end the war by destroying the planet. That would end all wars on Earth if Earth was destroyed. Even though that's a terrible way to try to end all wars. But, I've definitely seen that theme play out in different shows. We learned that 02 is a clone, or I wrote that down even though I feel like we knew that last episode. But she handled it really well, which was awesome. Usually, if that's like a moment in the show, I feel like the typical thing to do is like, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to handle myself? Because that would be pretty crazy to hear. But she's just like, I don't care if I'm a clone, if I'm a monster, if I'm this or that. Like, as long as I'm with him, I'm good. So that was really cool to see. We also got to learn that the Nines were clones of 02, but they're not quite as good, which it makes sense. I knew that they had something similar to her, so that's interesting. And we hear from Dr. Franxx that he wanted to become a Klaxosaur, which I find very interesting, especially for the guy that said that he didn't want to modify his body to like live forever or whatever it was. But he's completely okay with changing half his body to robot parts, and then he even wanted to become a Klaxosaur, which seems weird. I could see him wanting to be a Klaxosapien because, they have a lot of intelligence, they seem to be powerful, they have the horns, whatever. But to be a Klaxosaur is just to, like, be this beast. Even for the Klaxosapiens, it didn't seem like becoming the Klaxosaurs was ideal for them. But, it was almost like a side effect of having to fight in a war. It wasn't like their ideal state necessarily. Though we did have some mentioning from the princess saying that she thought that their people would be better off abandoning their ties and their connections in order to focus on themselves, which I find is very interesting. I think we're dealing with that actually a lot in modern days, and it might be speaking towards that a bit of like a ton of people, are selfish and they betray others, they act horrible, and when you feel that happen to you, you start trusting in people less and in humanity less. And if you've been hurt in several relationships, it's hard for you to open up and feel that connection with someone. And a lot of times, if you love someone, even half as much as 02 or Hero love each other, then it leaves you open a lot, and then, to being betrayed, or, just to whatever happening. And a lot of people choose to be more closed off, even though as humans, we want to be connected. We want to feel like we're heard. We want to feel like we belong, and we want to develop deep and meaningful relations with everyone. Well, not everyone, but we want to develop, friendships and be close to our families and all this stuff. So it's sad when we can't have that. And I do agree with the show that it's a flaw in humans to think that we're better off on our own. But I also completely understand why we feel that way, because I felt that way before. It can be really tough. But yeah, like I said, I didn't leave too many notes. This episode was just amazing. I mean, it's arguably even it's definitely one of my favorite episodes. I'm not sure if it is my favorite episode. It might be. There's a lot of really good episodes, though. I could say that about like half the episodes in the series. It's just so good. Of course, I definitely don't want to not talk about the ending, because I feel like if you're listening to this episode, you definitely want to hear my perspective of the ending, which is everything is super happy, except we see the Doctor die, which I thought was coming. I was going to guess that he was going to die in this podcast if he didn't die by the end of the episode, but he did, so I was like, okay, a little too late for that. Just because he got to accomplish his quote unquote destiny, his main goal in life. So it made sense for his character to die. But 02 at the end was unresponsive. Her eyes were open, but it seemed like she was lifeless. If she had just died. I don't know what that was all about. If they just used so much power that it killed her. But I don't actually think that she's dead. I think that she might be dead until the last episode, kind of thing. but I don't think she's permanently dead. She might be, but I would say the percentage chance of her being permanently dead, I'm going to rate as low as like 7%. I think that she's dead, or maybe not dead, but something's wrong with her. Maybe in a coma or something. I could see that happening, and then something happening to bring her back at the end when they need her. Now, I do find it very interesting, because I was thinking, like, okay, we still have a few more episodes left. I was like, are they just going to keep fighting? And then maybe the last episode's kind of like the happy reunion, like see where everyone's going after this war. But instead of giving that, we get something much more interesting, which is the fact that they all leave, and then these characters have to deal with the aftermath of that, which I think is going to be really, really cool and interesting to see them together. I think we'll also get a sort of redemption from the nines that are still alive, that is. We'll see that they feel betrayed, and they learn what it is. Like, instead of being jealous of humans, which I feel like they are. Well, I feel like they do feel like they're superior, but I feel like it's kind of changing into jealousy, which will then change into sort of admiration. And I think that they will die and sacrifice themselves to help out in the war for the final battle. I also think that Ichigo and Goro is still alive. We noticed that Izuki, I think Izuki's her name. We noticed that her hair whitened from their like super ultra mega power blast. So that's interesting. Hopefully she'll be okay. I don't really know. I mean, I assume it drained her energy, but I don't know exactly if that means that she will die, if she needs to just lay in bed, if she's sick, or what happens from that. Anyways, this was an amazing episode. I loved 02 and Hero's moments. I'm so happy that they didn't choose the route for 02 to make her like absurdly crazy and like murderous or something. Like, I do like another character that's like that in another show, but I didn't need to see it again here. And I think that 02 did a really good job of sort of setting me up to believe that she might be that way, and then subverting that expectation in a way that made sense for the character. It's not like they just subverted the expectation just to do it. It actually makes sense in their story. So I'm really happy to see that. Anyways, love the episode. Thanks for listening. As always, stay awesome. Bye. Welcome to the season finale of Hello Darling. I loved this anime, and I continue to love this anime, and I am totally not crying at all. Yeah, so okay. I think that this anime was absolutely beautiful. It was breathtaking, phenomenal. I can see some people. I feel like if you're probably at this point in this series, you would be likely to agree with me. But I could definitely see some people, or a lot of people, especially that's not listening to this podcast, if they were to hear me say these kind of things, they would think I'm being ridiculous. But this might just be my favorite anime of all time, at least for now. I think that it's just the animation's beautiful, the characters are so well realized and are so well written, and I liked all the characters that were named. I think that they were just everything, just all the writing just seemed to be so on point. The show continued to surprise me, despite guessing a lot of theories and having certain things that I kind of thought would happen. It still managed to surprise me in crazy ways, but not in ways that felt forced onto the show. It always felt like it knew exactly what it wanted to be, and it knew exactly what story it wanted to tell, and it was telling that story all the way through. I am pleasantly surprised that it had a pretty overall happy ending, but surprised in a good way. I did hint at recently that I did think that we would get a happier ending than I originally had thought when I first started watching the series based on people's reactions to it. I think that I'm not going to say that you have to be crazy not to like this series, because, everyone definitely has their own taste, their own preferences. There's lots of people that just don't even, like, just watching, like, an animated show just isn't something that they enjoy, and they can't get past that. So, I'm not going to say that those people are wrong or they're horrible or anything like that. I do think, though, that it is crazy to me that this show isn't talked about more. It does seem like it's fairly popular, but like, to have something like Tokyo Ghoul be as popular as it is, and Darling in the Franxx to not be that popular, if not more popular, is crazy to me. I think that just everything is done so well. Ah, man, it's so good. And one reason why I wanted to make sure that I combined the last 3 episodes for this one discussion is because I knew that it was all coming to an end for the series. It wasn't as much about the theories as much, and I just wanted to. I knew I wouldn't have as much to say other than just gushing about it or hating on it, depending on how it ended. We, of course, had Mitsuru and Kokoro. They had their kid, and they had their touching moments, and she's pregnant, and I realized that she was going to be pregnant basically like right before it happened, and I was like, oh yeah, of course. And then Mitsuru and Kokoro having their moments where they're saying each other's names over and over, and they're crying, and they're holding each other. That was just so sweet. I loved it. And then seeing their relationship blossom was awesome. Seeing Futoshi have his relationship with some woman, and the terrible mustache. But, it seems like he's real happy, so I'm super happy for him. We see that my man Goro, he's with Ichigo, and they have a kid, and that's awesome. It seems like it kind of took him a little longer to make things work, but I'm happy that things worked out for them. We also have the girl with the glasses, who I know I mispronounced her name and during my last recording, but but I can't remember her name. It bothers me, but she found someone, and it was cool that they managed to tie in the original person who I thought that they had just written off to die. They tied her back in a way that wasn't forced, and it showed you that she was nice and still part of the family, especially when Ichigo grabbed her hip instead of her hand. It was just really nice to see that they still had that bond, but not like show us too much of that character because we weren't bonded to that character. So I felt like they handled that really well. And it seems like Zorme and Miku, maybe they're not in a relationship together, but it definitely seems like they're either really close friends or that it's still a possibility for them to be in a relationship together, even though they butt heads a ton. Of course, they have all the little kids running around, and they're having, they're starting up schools, and they're starting life again, and everything was beautiful. The way that the way the planet looked, and the trees and everything. Hanji, I think that was his name, and the original Nana, they mentioned that they weren't kids, which I knew, but they mentioned that they also weren't adults, and they're somewhere in between. I wonder what that means. Does that mean that they're supposed to be like 17? Or, I mean, I felt like they were older than that, so I feel like they were kind of like in their mid-20s, but I guess they're still saying like they're still young and kind of like children, but they're definitely older than children, but they're not as old as like all the adults that ran everything and all that stuff. So I'm not sure if that's what they meant, but it doesn't really matter. I was about to say, when Goro first left to go see the world and do all that stuff, I was a little hurt that Ichigo didn't go with him. I was like, oh, I guess, things aren't going to work out for them. But, he came back soon enough, and they did their prayer scene, which I could definitely feel some people think is really stupid and stuff. But, I mean, I felt like this show didn't ever break any rules that it already established. Like, everything made sense to me in the context of the show. And I've always been someone that want I've always been someone that wanted to believe, or that wants to continuously believe, in things that other people might not believe, like things that, like love can transcend a lot of things. I want to believe that, that people's spirits, that their souls can connect in ways that science hasn't proven, and that we can be there to, heal one another and be there for one another. Now, I'm not saying that I believe that, we can create like a gigantic robot that looks like a person partially and go destroying around, destroying solar systems and all this stuff. But I do have I do have a spiritual side to me. But, this podcast isn't to dive too much into that. We also got to hear from Ape that they said that they are not done and that they will continue on. I wonder if that's setting up for another season. I kind of don't feel like it is, but it's just weird to me that they didn't get completely obliterated. Like, it's weird to me that they're still kind of around. I kind of don't want to see another season, though, because I felt like this one was so perfect that, like, the ending is just so good, and the heights that they have reached in this show were so good. I don't want to see them trying to overdo themselves or top themselves. However, if the writers believe that they can, like, if the writers believe that they can do a very good second season, like if they feel like they can do a good job and like they feel confident in it and it's not like a money grab, then I'm all on board. I'm always on board with writers continuing anything as long as they truly believe within themselves that they can do a good job and that it will be just as good as the original thing. That's exactly what the guy from Incredibles did. They wanted him to make a second Incredibles immediately after, but he's like, I'm not going to make one unless I feel like it's going to be just as good as the original. And I know that everyone believes that the second Incredibles is as good as the original, but you have to at least admit it's a really good Incredibles, and it's not something that ruined the series. So if they wanted to do that for Darling in the Franxx, I'd be open to it. Anyways, thank you so much for sticking with me on this crazy journey. It's been literally so crazy for me. I've never done something like this before, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and I had no idea that I would love the show this much. I honestly, a part of me was worried that during some sort of turning point that people kept talking about, I would end up sort of hating the show, and I didn't want to have to cancel the series, so I didn't know if I was going to have to force myself to continue watching so I could keep the series going and just tell you how much I hated it. Or maybe I just kind of find it mediocre and my content wouldn't be that good. I hope that my content's good just for me showering my praise and love for it. I know sometimes it can be more interesting hearing people talk about how much they hate something, how much they don't like something, all that kind of stuff, because, drama and controversy drives a lot of attention. But anyways, thank you so much for being there and listening. I feel like, in a weird way, that we're connected. And I think that's awesome. And right now I'm actually recording on my birthday. And yesterday it was really rainy and stormy. And I see that the sun's come out. And today's a beautiful day. And just like the show ended in a beautiful way, it's really cool and a pleasant experience for me to have this on my birthday. So, yeah, the show's really meant a lot to me. And I love it so much. So thank you for listening, and if you're wondering if we're going to do more episodes, I'm not sure exactly how long we can continue this series, but I will continue to release episodes as I hear news on Darling in the Franxx. So if they release additional news for like new video games or a new series, or some guy has a video talking crap about it, maybe I will post my thoughts on that video. I did manage to see that a lot of people hated Ichigo, or at least I that's what I heard from one little source, and I clicked right off of it because I didn't want to be spoiled. But that is shocking to me, honestly. I think she's a beautiful character, And I mean that as far as like her character. Like, I mean, I think it's dumb to hate on that character. But yeah, I'm just kind of ranting at this point. Yeah, we'll dive into more topics though. So thank you for listening, and as always, stay awesome.